Imagine a world where the horizon trembles with the promise of conquest, where a single spark of ambition ignites a flame that burns for centuries. Picture a vast empire, its golden domes catching the first light of dawn, its armies marching under banners that flutter like the wings of destiny. This is the Ottoman Empire, a colossus that once spanned 3 continents, a realm where East met West, where cultures blended in a tapestry of power and splendor. As you settle into the quiet of this moment, let the story of this empire's rise unfold, a tale that will carry you through time toward a fatal mistake that changed history forever. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the whispers of the past guide you into a world of sultans, warriors, and dreams that shaped the ages. The story begins in 1299 in the rugged hills of northwest Anatolia, where a young warrior named Osman Faris gazes across a fractured land. The Seljuk Empire, once mighty, lies in ruins, torn apart by internal strife and the Mongol invasions that swept through Asia. In this chaos, Osman, a chieftain of a small Turkish tribe, sees opportunity. He is no ordinary leader. His charisma, courage, and vision set him apart. His dreams are vast: to build a state that will outshine its rivals, to forge an empire that will stand the test of time. With a band of loyal followers, he begins his conquest, capturing small fortresses and uniting neighboring tribes. His victories are modest at first, but each one lays the foundation for something greater. Osman's followers call him Ghazi, a warrior of the faith, and his name becomes a rallying cry for those who seek glory under his banner. Osman's successors inherit his ambition, expanding their fledgling state with relentless determination. By the early 14th century, the Ottoman Principality is no longer a mere tribe, but a growing power. Osman's son, Orhan, captures the city of Bursa in 1326, making it the first Ottoman capital. Bursa is a prize, a city of silk markets and ancient walls nestled in the shadow of Mount Uludağ. Orhan's reign is marked by innovation. He establishes the Janissaries, an elite corps of warriors drawn from Christian youths, converted and trained to serve the Sultan with unwavering loyalty. These soldiers, bound by discipline and skill, become the backbone of the Ottoman military. Orhan also marries a Byzantine princess, forging alliances that blur the lines between cultures. The Ottomans are not just conquerors, they are builders, weaving together Turkic, Persian, and Byzantine traditions into a unique identity. The empire's rise accelerates under Murad I, who takes the throne in 1362. Murad is a warrior king, his eyes set on Europe. He crosses the Dardanelles, capturing Adrianople, modern Edirne, in 1369, making it a new capital closer to the European frontier. This move signals the Ottomans' ambition. They are no longer content with Anatolia. They aim to conquer the Balkans. Murad's armies sweep through Serbia and Bulgaria, defeating Christian coalitions at battles like Kosovo in 1389. These victories are not just military triumphs but psychological blows, establishing the Ottomans as a force to be feared. Yet Murad's reign is not without tragedy. At Kosovo, he is assassinated by a Serbian noble, a reminder that conquest comes at a cost. His son, Bayezid III, known as the Thunderbolt, inherits the throne and pushes the empire's borders further, defeating Crusader armies and laying siege to Constantinople itself. Bayezid's ambition, however, meets a formidable foe. In 1402, the Mongol warlord Timur, a conqueror as ruthless as any Ottoman, invades Anatolia. At the Battle of Ankara, Bayezid's army is crushed, and he is captured, dying in captivity. The empire teeters on the brink of collapse, its princes locked in a bitter civil war. Yet, from this chaos emerges Mehmed I, who reunites the Ottoman lands by 1413. His successors rebuild, and by 1453 the empire reaches a turning point under Mehmed II, known as Mehmed the Conqueror. At just 21 years old, Mehmed sets his sights on Constantinople, the last remnant of the Byzantine Empire. For over 1,000 years, Constantinople has stood as the queen of cities, its walls unbreached, its churches glittering with mosaics. Mehmed, however, is undaunted. He builds a massive cannon, the largest the world has seen, capable of hurling stones weighing over a ton. In April 1453, his army of 80,000 besieges the city, while his navy blockades the Bosphorus. The siege is a clash of eras. Constantinople's defenders, led by Emperor Constantine V, number fewer than 10,000, but their walls are legendary. For 53 days the Ottomans bombard the city, their cannons shaking the earth. Mehmed's engineers dig tunnels, his ships are dragged overland to bypass Byzantine chains, and his troops assault the walls relentlessly. On May 29, 1453, the final attack comes. Ottoman soldiers pour through a breached gate, and Constantinople falls. Mehmed enters the city in triumph, declaring it the new capital, Istanbul. Hagia Sophia, the great Byzantine cathedral, is converted into a mosque, its domes echoing with the call to prayer. This victory is more than a conquest. It is a statement. The Ottomans are now a world power, bridging Europe and Asia, their empire a beacon of might and culture. Under Mehmed II, Istanbul becomes a cosmopolitan hub. He invites scholars, artists and merchants, Muslims, Christians and Jews to rebuild the city. The empire grows, absorbing Greece, Serbia and parts of the Middle East. Mehmed's successors continue his legacy, but it is Suleiman the Magnificent, ruling from 1520 to 1566, who elevates the empire to its zenith. Suleiman is a figure of legend, a warrior, a poet, a lawgiver. His armies capture Belgrade, Rhodes and Baghdad, while his navy, led by admirals like Barbarossa, dominates the Mediterranean. At home, he reforms the legal system, earning the title Kanuni, the lawgiver. The Süleymaniye Mosque, a masterpiece of architect Sinan, rises in Istanbul, its minarets touching the heavens. Suleiman's court is a center of learning, where poets recite verses, astronomers study the stars, and artisans craft tiles that shimmer like jewels. Yet even in this golden age, seeds of decline are sown. Suleiman's empire is vast, but its size is its weakness. Governing such diverse lands requires immense resources, and the treasury strains under the weight of wars and lavish spending. The Janissaries, once loyal, begin to wield political power, demanding privileges that weaken the Sultan's authority. Suleiman's later years are marred by personal tragedy. He executes his own son, Mustafa, on suspicion of treason, a decision that haunts the empire's succession. When Suleiman dies in 1566 during a campaign in Hungary, the empire mourns a giant. His successors, however, lack his vision. The world is changing, and the Ottomans struggle to keep pace. By the late 17th century, the empire faces new challenges. Europe's Renaissance has birthed modern armies and economies, while the Ottomans rely on outdated tactics. The Janissaries resist reform, and corruption festers in the bureaucracy. Trade routes shift to the Atlantic, bypassing Ottoman ports. Yet the empire remains formidable, its pride undimmed. In 1683, Sultan Mehmed IV, a devout but impulsive ruler, dreams of reviving the glory of Suleiman's era. He turns to his Grand Vizier, Kara Mustafa Pasha, a man whose ambition will lead to the fatal mistake that changes everything. As you drift towards sleep, picture the golden domes of Istanbul, the clash of swords in the Balkans, and the rise of an empire that seemed eternal. Let the story carry you as we move toward the moment when one choice will unravel it all. As the stars twinkle above the minarets of Istanbul, the Ottoman Empire stands at a crossroads, its past a tapestry of triumphs, its future clouded by ambition and peril. The year is 1683, and the empire, though vast, feels the weight of its own greatness. From the bustling bazaars of its capital to the distant fortresses of Hungary, the Ottoman world hums with energy, yet whispers of decline echo in its halls. Sultan Mehmed IV, a ruler driven by faith and dreams of glory, gazes westward toward Vienna, the heart of the Habsburg Empire, a city that could unlock Europe's riches. As you settle deeper into the calm of this moment, let the story of this fateful campaign unfold, a tale of pride, strategy, and a misstep that will echo through history. Breathe slowly, and let the past carry you toward the siege that changed an empire's destiny. Mehmed IV is not a warrior like his ancestors, but his devotion to the empire's legacy burns fiercely. Raised in the opulent halls of Topkapi Palace, he is surrounded by advisors who whisper of past glories, Suleiman's conquests, Mehmed the Conqueror's triumph at Constantinople. The Sultan longs to restore that splendor, to prove the empire's might in a world that grows increasingly bold. His Grand Vizier, Kara Mustafa Pasha, is the man to make this dream reality. Kara Mustafa is a figure of towering ambition, his Albanian roots grounding him in a fierce determination to rise. Appointed Grand Vizier in 1676, he commands the empire's armies and bureaucracy with an iron hand. His vision is audacious: to capture Vienna, the gateway to Western Europe, and cement the Ottoman Empire as the unchallenged master of two continents. Vienna is no ordinary prize. Perched on the Danube, it is the capital of the Habsburg Empire, a bulwark of Christendom, and a symbol of European resistance. Its walls are formidable, its strategic position vital. To capture Vienna would not only secure the Ottoman frontier, but also open the path to Germany, Italy, and beyond. Kara Mustafa sees this as his destiny, a chance to etch his name alongside the greatest Ottoman conquerors. In early 1683, he convinces Mehmed IV to launch a campaign of unprecedented scale. The Sultan, swayed by promises of glory, agrees, and the empire's war machine roars to life. From across the realm, troops gather, janissaries disciplined and fearsome, Sipahi cavalry, their sabers gleaming, and auxiliaries from the Balkans, Arabia, and Anatolia. Over 100,000 men assemble, a force so vast it seems unstoppable. Massive cannons forged in Istanbul's foundries are dragged by oxen, their barrels gleaming with menace. Supply trains stretch for miles carrying food, tents, and the trappings of a mobile court. The march to Vienna begins in spring 1683, a spectacle of power and purpose. The army moves like a living tide, its banners fluttering in the wind, its drums beating a rhythm that echoes across the plains. Kara Mustafa rides at its head, his armor adorned with gold, his mind fixed on the prize. The journey is arduous. Rivers swell with spring rains, roads turn to mud, and disease stalks the ranks. Yet, the Grand Vizier's confidence is unshaken. He believes the Habsburgs, weakened by internal divisions, cannot withstand the Ottoman onslaught. Reports of European disunity fuel his optimism. The Holy Roman Empire is fractured, France is distracted by its own ambitions, and Poland, though a potential threat, seems far away. Kara Mustafa's plan is meticulous: besiege Vienna, starve its defenders, and force a surrender before any relief can arrive. In July 1683, the Ottoman army reaches Vienna's outskirts. The city is a fortress, its walls reinforced with bastions, its moat deep and treacherous. Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, Vienna's commander, has fewer than 15,000 men, but his resolve is ironclad. Emperor Leopold I, aware of the city's importance, has fled to rally support, leaving Starhemberg to hold the line. Kara Mustafa sends an ultimatum: surrender, and the city will be spared. Resist and face annihilation. The defenders refuse, and the siege begins. The Ottomans encircle Vienna, digging trenches and erecting earthworks. Their cannons, some of the largest in the world, unleash a relentless barrage, shaking the city's walls. Sappers tunnel beneath the fortifications, planting explosives to breach the defenses. Inside Vienna, the defenders endure starvation, disease, and the constant roar of artillery. Starhemberg rallies his men, repairing breaches and repelling assaults, but the situation grows dire. Kara Mustafa, however, is overconfident. He believes Vienna will fall without a costly assault, so he delays a final attack, focusing on bombardment and attrition. This is his first misstep, a sign of hubris that blinds him to the gathering storm. While the siege tightens, the Holy League, a coalition of Poland, the Holy Roman Empire, Venice, and others, forms to save Vienna. At its head is King John III Sobieski of Poland, a commander of rare skill. Sobieski's army includes the winged hussars, cavalry whose winged armor makes them a terrifying sight. Kara Mustafa underestimates this threat, assuming his vast army can crush any relief force. He neglects to fortify his rear, focusing instead on the siege. This is the fatal mistake, the pivot on which the empire's fate will turn. As the siege drags into September, Vienna's defenders cling to hope. Food dwindles and morale wanes, but Starhemberg's leadership holds the city together. Outside, Sobieski's forces approach, their banners cresting the hills of Kahlenberg. On September 12, 1683, the Battle of Vienna begins. Sobieski launches a daring assault, his winged hussars charging down the slopes in a thunderous wave. The Ottoman lines, unprepared for a field battle, buckle under the onslaught. Kara Mustafa scrambles to respond, but his army, exhausted and poorly positioned, cannot hold. By evening, the Ottomans are in full retreat, abandoning cannons, supplies, and the Grand Vizier's own tent filled with treasures. Vienna is saved, and the Ottoman dream of European conquest lies in tatters. The defeat is catastrophic. Kara Mustafa flees to Belgrade, where he faces the Sultan's wrath. On December 25, 1683, he is executed, strangled with a silk cord, a grim end for a man who gambled everything. The Battle of Vienna is more than a loss. It is a turning point. The Holy League, emboldened, launches a counter-offensive, reclaiming Hungary and parts of the Balkans. The Treaty of Karlowitz in 1699 formalizes these losses, marking the first time the Ottomans cede significant territory. The empire's aura of invincibility is shattered, and its decline begins. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the clash of swords on Kahlenberg Hill, the fading drums of the Ottoman retreat, and the weight of a single mistake. Let the story carry you as we move toward the empire's long twilight. As the night settles around you, imagine a city aglow with the light of 1,000 lanterns, its minarets piercing the velvet sky, its streets alive with the hum of commerce and culture. This is Istanbul in the 16th century, the beating heart of the Ottoman Empire at its zenith, a realm where ambition and artistry intertwine. The empire stretches across 3 continents, its banners fluttering from the Danube to the Euphrates, its ships commanding the seas. At its helm is Suleiman, known as the Magnificent in Europe and the lawgiver in his own lands, a ruler whose reign marks the pinnacle of Ottoman glory. As you drift towards sleep, let this tale of triumphs and hidden cracks unfold, a story that carries us closer to the fatal mistake that will one day unravel this mighty empire. Breathe deeply and let the past wrap you in its embrace, guiding you through a world of conquest and splendor. The year is 1520, and Suleiman, barely 26 years old, ascends the throne. He is a figure of striking presence, tall with a thoughtful gaze and a poet's soul, yet a warrior's resolve. Born in Trabzon, raised in the opulent halls of Topkapi Palace, He has been groomed for greatness. His father, Selim, better known as the Grim, doubled the empire's size, conquering Egypt and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Suleiman inherits a realm of immense power, but also immense responsibility. The Ottoman Empire is a mosaic of peoples: Turks, Arabs, Greeks, Armenians, Jews, united under a system that balances tolerance with control. The Sultan is not just a king but a caliph, a spiritual leader whose authority is seen as divinely ordained. Suleiman, however, is more than a title. He is a visionary, determined to elevate his empire to heights unseen. Suleiman's reign begins with a bold stroke. In 1521, he leads his army to Belgrade, a fortress city that guards the gateway to Europe. The siege is swift and decisive. The city falls, opening the Balkans to Ottoman rule. This victory sets the tone for Suleiman's ambitions. He turns next to Rhodes, a Mediterranean island held by the Knights Hospitaller, a Christian military order that harasses Ottoman shipping. In 1522, after a grueling 6-month siege, Rhodes surrenders. Suleiman, magnanimous in victory, allows the knights to leave unharmed, a gesture that earns him respect even among his foes. These conquests are not mere land grabs. They secure trade routes and project Ottoman power across the seas. Suleiman's navy, led by admirals like Hayreddin Barbarossa, dominates the Mediterranean, challenging European powers like Spain and Venice. On land, Suleiman's campaigns are equally relentless. In 1526, he marches into Hungary, facing a Christian coalition at the Battle of Mohacs. The Ottoman army, disciplined and innovative, crushes the Hungarians in a single day. The victory opens Central Europe, and Suleiman installs a vassal king in Hungary, extending Ottoman influence to the borders of Austria. 3 years later, in 1529, he lays siege to Vienna itself, the capital of the Habsburg Empire. The city's walls hold and winter forces a retreat, but the campaign sends a message. The Ottomans are a force Europe cannot ignore. Suleiman's ambition stretches eastward as well. In 1534, he captures Baghdad from the Safavid Empire, securing Mesopotamia and its trade routes. These victories cement his reputation as a conqueror, but Suleiman is more than a warrior. At home, Suleiman earns the title Kanuni, the lawgiver, for his sweeping reforms. The Ottoman legal system, a blend of Islamic law and imperial decrees, is complex and often inconsistent. Suleiman streamlines it, ensuring justice across his diverse empire. He codifies taxes, protects religious minorities, and standardizes land tenure, creating a system that balances central control with local autonomy. His court is a beacon of culture where poets like Baki weave verses that echo through the ages, and architects like Sinan craft masterpieces. The Süleymaniye Mosque, completed in 1557, rises in Istanbul, its domes and minarets a testament to Ottoman artistry. Sinan, a former janissary turned architectural genius, designs bridges, aqueducts, and mosques that blend Byzantine, Persian, and Islamic styles. Under Suleiman, Istanbul becomes a global city, its markets overflowing with silk, spices, and ideas. Yet even in this golden age, shadows lurk. The empire's vastness is its strength and its curse. Governing such a sprawling realm requires immense resources, and the treasury strains under the cost of wars and courtly splendor. The janissaries, the elite warriors who form the empire's backbone, are beginning to change. Once slaves trained for absolute loyalty, they now demand privileges, marrying and settling in cities, their discipline waning. Suleiman, aware of their importance, grants concessions, sowing seeds of future rebellion. The bureaucracy, too, shows signs of strain. Governors in distant provinces grow corrupt, skimming taxes and undermining central authority. Trade, the lifeblood of the empire, faces challenges as European powers explore new routes to Asia, bypassing Ottoman ports. Suleiman's personal life mirrors the empire's complexities. He marries Hurrem, a former concubine from Ruthenia, whose intelligence and influence reshaped the court. Known as Roxolana in Europe, she bears Suleiman several sons, breaking tradition by becoming his legal wife. Her rise sparks jealousy among the palace elite, and her influence over Suleiman fuels intrigue. The succession becomes a source of heartbreak. In 1553, Suleiman orders the execution of his son Mustafa, a capable prince suspected of plotting rebellion. The decision, likely influenced by Hurrem and her allies, shocks the empire and weakens the dynasty. Another son, Selim, inherits the throne, but his weaknesses foreshadow trouble. Suleiman's final years are marked by relentless campaigning. In 1566, at 71, he leads an army into Hungary, besieging the fortress of Sigetvar. The siege succeeds, but Suleiman dies in his tent, his heart giving out under the strain of a lifetime of war. His death is kept secret until his army returns to Istanbul, ensuring a smooth succession. The empire mourns a giant, but the cracks he could not mend begin to widen. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the Suleimaniye's domes glowing under the moon, the echo of Janissary drums, and the weight of an empire at its peak. Let this golden age carry you as we move toward the moment when ambition will lead to a fatal mistake. As the night deepens, picture the Ottoman Empire standing tall, its banners still fluttering across continents, its mosques casting long shadows over a world in flux. The year is 1566, and Suleiman the Magnificent has passed, leaving an empire that seems eternal, yet harbors unseen frailties. Istanbul remains a city of wonders, its bazaars alive with the scent of spices, its scholars debating under flickering lamps. But beneath this grandeur, the first threads of decline begin to unravel. The empire, so vast and powerful, is stretched thin, its strength tested by forces within and without. As you settle into the calm of this moment, let the story of this slow descent unfold, a tale that carries us toward the catastrophic choice that will one day topple a titan. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and let history's gentle tide guide you through the twilight of an empire. Suleiman's death marks the end of an era. His son Selim II takes the throne, but he is no match for his father. Known as Selim the Sot for his love of wine, he lacks the vision and vigor that defined Suleiman's reign. The empire, however, carries the momentum of its golden age. In 1571, the Ottoman navy suffers a setback at the Battle of Lepanto, where a European coalition led by Spain and Venice destroys much of the fleet. The loss is shocking, but the Ottomans rebuild swiftly, their shipyards churning out new galleys. On land, they continue to hold vast territories, from Hungary to Yemen, and their prestige remains unmatched. Yet, the empire's foundations are beginning to crack, and Selim's reign exposes weaknesses that will grow over time. The Janissaries, once the empire's pride, are a growing problem. Originally Christian youths trained as elite warriors, they were bound by strict discipline and loyalty to the Sultan. But by the late 16th century, they are no longer the ascetic soldiers of old. They demand the right to marry, settle in cities, and engage in trade, diluting their military focus. Worse, they begin to meddle in politics, staging revolts to influence the choice of sultans and viziers. Selim II, weak and indulgent, grants them concessions, setting a dangerous precedent. The Janissaries become a power unto themselves, a force that future sultans will struggle to control. Their corruption spreads to the bureaucracy, where officials grow rich by skimming taxes and selling offices. The once efficient system that governed the empire's diverse peoples begins to falter, sowing discontent in distant provinces. The economy, too, faces strain. The Ottoman Empire relies on trade, agriculture, and tribute from vassal states. But the age of exploration shifts global commerce. European powers like Portugal and Spain open sea routes to Asia and the Americas, bypassing Ottoman-controlled land routes. The influx of silver from the New World floods European markets, causing inflation that ripples into the Ottoman economy. Merchants in Istanbul and Aleppo struggle to compete, and the treasury, drained by wars and lavish court spending, cannot keep pace. Suleiman's campaigns, though glorious, were costly, and his successors continued to wage wars without the same success. The empire's borders are vast, but defending them requires constant resources, stretching the state to its limits. External threats grow as well. In the east, the Safavid Empire, ruled by Shia Muslims, challenges Ottoman Sunni dominance. Wars with the Safavids drain resources and fuel religious tensions within the empire. In Europe, the Habsburgs, ruling the Holy Roman Empire, fortify their defenses, determined to halt Ottoman expansion. The rise of Russia under the Romanovs adds another foe, as Moscow seeks to expand into the Black Sea, an Ottoman stronghold. These rivals are not just military threats. They represent a shifting world. Europe's Renaissance and Reformation have sparked innovation, producing modern armies and centralized states. The Ottomans, reliant on traditional tactics and a decentralized system, struggled to adapt. Selim II's successors try to stem the tide. Murad III, ruling from 1574 to 1595, expands the empire further, capturing parts of the Caucasus and Persia. But his reign is marred by palace intrigues and economic woes. The practice of confining princes to the cage in Topkapi Palace, a measure to prevent rebellion, produces rulers unprepared for governance. Mehmed III, who succeeds Murad, shocks the empire by ordering the execution of his 19 brothers to secure his throne, a grim sign of dynastic instability. By the early 17th century, the empire faces internal revolts, from Kurdish tribes in Anatolia to Druze rebels in Lebanon. These uprisings, often sparked by heavy taxes and corrupt governors, reveal the empire's growing fragility. Yet the Ottomans remain a formidable power. Under Ahmed I, the Blue Mosque rises in Istanbul, its 6 minarets a symbol of enduring ambition. Military campaigns continue, and the empire holds its own against European coalitions. In 1606, the Treaty of Zitvatorok ends a long war with the Habsburgs, marking a rare moment of peace. But the treaty also signals a shift. The Ottomans are no longer dictating terms as they once did. The balance of power is tilting, and Europe's growing unity and technological advances pose challenges the empire cannot ignore. By the mid-17th century, a series of weak sultans exacerbates the decline. Mustafa I, declared insane, is deposed twice. Osman II, a reformer, tries to curb the Janissaries' power but is overthrown and killed in 1622, a warning to future sultans. The empire's resilience, however, lies in its institutions. Grand viziers, like the Köprülü family, take the reins, restoring stability through ruthless efficiency. Mehmed Köprülü, appointed in 1656, purges corrupt officials and strengthens the military, winning victories against Venice and the Habsburgs. His son, Ahmed Köprülü, continues his work, capturing Crete in 1669 after a 24-year siege. These successes mask deeper issues, buying time but not solutions. As the stars blanket the sky, imagine a city where the call to prayer mingles with the clatter of markets, where the Bosphorus shimmers under moonlight, and an empire teeters between grandeur and fragility. It is the late 17th century, and the Ottoman Empire, though vast, feels the weight of its own history. Its golden age under sultans like Suleiman is a fading memory, yet its ambition burns bright. At its helm is Sultan Mehmed IV, a ruler driven by faith and dreams of reviving past glories, his court a swirl of intrigue and aspiration. As you settle into the quiet of this moment, let the story of his reign unfold, a tale of hope, struggle, and a grand vizier whose ambition will lead to a catastrophic choice. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the past carry you toward the moment that will change an empire's fate. The year is 1648, and Mehmed IV ascends the throne at the tender age of 6, a boy king thrust into a world of power and peril. Born in Topkapi Palace, He is the son of Sultan Ibrahim, a troubled ruler whose erratic reign ended in deposition and execution. The Ottoman Empire, still a colossus stretching from Hungary to Yemen, is no longer the invincible force it once was. The Janissaries, the elite warriors who once served the Sultan with unwavering loyalty, have become a political force, staging coups and demanding privileges. The economy, strained by wars and shifting trade routes, struggles to support the empire's vast borders. Corruption festers in the bureaucracy, and distant provinces grow restive under heavy taxes. Yet, the empire's prestige endures, its mosques and markets a testament to centuries of triumph. Mehmed's early years are shaped by the women of the palace. His mother, Turhan Sultan, a formidable figure from Ruthenia, becomes the Valide Sultan, wielding influence as regent. The empire is governed by a series of grand viziers, each grappling with challenges that threaten to unravel the state. The Janissaries, now a law unto themselves, resist reforms, while European powers, the Habsburgs, Venice, and the rising Russian state, grow bolder. Mehmed, raised in the opulent but isolated world of the harem, is devout and eager to prove himself. As he comes of age, he dreams of restoring the empire's glory, of leading it back to the days of Suleiman, when Ottoman banners struck fear across continents. By the 1660s, Mehmed takes a more active role, his piety shaping his rule. Known as Avcı, the hunter, for his love of the chase, he spends much time outside Istanbul, pursuing game in the forests of Edirne. Yet his devotion to Islam drives him to seek divine favor through conquest. The empire, though weakened, is far from powerless. Under the Köprülü family of Grand Viziers, it has seen a resurgence. Mehmed Köprülü, appointed in 1656, purged corrupt officials and restored military discipline, winning victories against Venice and the Habsburgs. His son, Ahmed Köprülü, continued this work, capturing Crete in 1669 after a grueling 24-year siege. These successes bolster Mehmed's confidence, convincing him that the empire can reclaim its place as the world's preeminent power. In 1676, a new figure rises to prominence, Kara Mustafa Pasha, appointed Grand Vizier at the age of 42. Born into an Albanian family in Merzifonte, Kara Mustafa is a product of the Ottoman system, trained in the palace school and mentored by the Köprülüs. He is brilliant, ruthless, and fiercely ambitious, his eyes set on a prize that will define his legacy: Vienna, the capital of the Habsburg Empire. Capturing Vienna would not only secure the Ottoman frontier, but also open the path to Western Europe, fulfilling the dreams of sultans past. Mehmed, inspired by tales of Mehmed the Conqueror, sees in Kara Mustafa a leader who can make this vision reality. The Sultan, now in his 30s, grants his Grand Vizier near absolute authority, trusting him to lead the empire to glory. Kara Mustafa's rise is meteoric, but the empire he inherits is a complex machine. The Janissaries, numbering tens of thousands, are a double-edged sword, formidable in battle but prone to rebellion. The Sipahi cavalry, once the empire's swift fist, struggle to adapt to modern warfare. The economy, though stabilized by the Köprülüs, remains fragile, reliant on taxes from restive provinces. Europe, meanwhile, is changing. The 30 Years' War has ended, leaving the Habsburg stronger and more united. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, under King John III Sobieski, is a rising power, its winged hussars a fearsome force. Russia, expanding under the Romanovs, eyes the Black Sea. Kara Mustafa, however, is undaunted. He believes the Ottomans' numerical superiority and his own strategic genius will overcome any challenge. In 1682, Kara Mustafa begins planning the campaign that will define his legacy. he proposes a massive assault on Vienna, arguing that its capture will secure the empire's western borders and open Europe to Ottoman rule. Mehmed IV, swayed by his Grand Vizier's confidence, approves the plan. The empire mobilizes, drawing troops from across its lands, janissaries from Istanbul, sipahis from Anatolia, auxiliaries from the Balkans and Arabia. Over 100,000 men assemble, a force that dwarfs any European army. Massive cannons forged in Istanbul's arsenals are prepared, their barrels designed to shatter stone walls. Supply trains laden with food, tents, and gunpowder stretch for miles. The campaign is a gamble, but Kara Mustafa sees it as destiny. He dreams of entering Vienna in triumph, his name immortalized alongside Suleiman's. As preparations unfold, the empire buzzes with anticipation. In Istanbul, artisans craft banners and poets compose verses praising the coming victory. In Edirne, Mehmed prays for divine favor, his faith intertwining with his ambition. Yet, beneath the surface, tensions simmer. The janissaries grumble about the long march ahead, their loyalty to Kara Mustafa uncertain. Provincial governors, squeezed for funds, report unrest among their subjects. European spies, ever watchful, send word of the Ottoman build-up, prompting the Habsburgs to fortify Vienna. Kara Mustafa, however, dismisses these concerns. He believes the Habsburgs are divided, their allies distracted, and Vienna's defences no match for his army. This confidence, bordering on hubris, will prove his undoing. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the torchlit camps of the Ottoman army, the distant hum of prayers, and the weight of a dream that spans continents. The empire stands poised for greatness, its sultan and grand vizier united in purpose. Yet the seeds of a fatal mistake are taking root, a miscalculation that will echo through history. Let this story carry you as we move closer to the siege that will test an empire's strength and reveal its fragility. As the night wraps you in its gentle embrace, picture a world on the brink, where the clash of empires stirs the air, and the fate of nations hangs in a delicate balance. It is 1683, and the Ottoman Empire, a titan of 3 continents, prepares for its greatest gamble. From the golden domes of Istanbul to the windswept plains of Hungary, the empire pulses with ambition, its armies marshalling for a campaign that will shape history. At its forefront is Kara Mustafa Pasha, a grand vizier whose vision burns bright, yet whose pride blinds him to the dangers ahead. As you settle deeper into the calm of this moment, let the story of this fateful march unfold, a tale of strategy, hubris, and a mistake that will unravel a dynasty. Breathe slowly, and let the past guide you toward the siege that will change everything. Kara Mustafa Pasha stands at the peak of his power, a man whose ambition rivals the sultans of old. Born in 1634 in Merziphon, he was raised in the shadow of the Köprülü family, the architects of the empire's mid-17th century revival. Trained in the palace school, he mastered the arts of war and governance, his intellect matched only by his ruthlessness. As Grand Vizier, he commands the empire's resources with an iron will, his authority second only to Sultan Mehmed IV. His dream is bold, to capture Vienna, the heart of the Habsburg Empire, and open Europe to Ottoman rule. Vienna is not just a city, it is a symbol, a fortress that guards the Christian heartland. Its fall would cement Kara Mustafa's legacy, placing him among the empire's greatest conquerors. The campaign begins in early 1683 as winter gives way to spring. From across the empire, troops converge on Edirne, the staging ground for the march. The janissaries, clad in their distinctive uniforms, march with disciplined precision, their muskets gleaming. The Sipahi cavalry, their sabers flashing, ride from Anatolia, their loyalty tied to land grants that fund their service. Auxiliaries, Crimean Tatars, Balkan irregulars, and Arab tribesmen swell the ranks, bringing the army to over 100,000 men. Massive cannons, some requiring dozens of oxen to pull, are dragged from Istanbul's foundries. These supercannons, designed to breach fortress walls, are a testament to Ottoman engineering, their roar a harbinger of destruction. Supply. Trains laden with grain, gunpowder, and tents stretch for miles, a mobile city sustaining the army's advance. The march to Vienna is a spectacle of power, but also a test of endurance. The army crosses rivers swollen with spring rains, trudges through muddy plains, and battles disease that fells men and beasts alike. Kara Mustafa, riding at the head, is a commanding figure, his tent adorned with silk and gold, his orders unquestioned. He believes the Habsburgs are unprepared, their emperor, Leopold V, weakened by internal divisions. Reports suggest France, a rival to the Habsburgs, will remain neutral, while Poland's King John III Sobieski is preoccupied with domestic strife. Kara Mustafa's plan is clear: besiege Vienna, overwhelm its defences, and force a surrender before any relief can arrive. He calculates that the city's walls, though strong, cannot withstand his artillery, and its garrison, led by Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, is outnumbered. In Istanbul, the campaign sparks a fervour. Poets laud Kara Mustafa's vision, and imams pray for victory in mosques across the city. Sultan Mehmed IV, residing in Edirne, sends messages of support, his prayers mingling with those of his subjects. Yet, not all share the Grand Vizier's confidence. The Janissaries, though disciplined, grumble about the campaign's risks, their loyalty strained by years of privilege. Provincial governors report unrest as taxes to fund the war burden farmers and merchants. In the palace, whispers of doubt circulate. Some advisors question Kara Mustafa's ambition, warning that failure could destabilize the empire. The Grand Vizier, however, is undeterred. He sees himself as the heir to Mehmed the Conqueror, destined to achieve what even Suleiman could not. As the army approaches Vienna in July 1683, the city prepares for siege. Starhemberg, a seasoned commander, has fortified the walls, deepened the moat, and stockpiled supplies. The garrison, though only 15,000 strong, is determined, bolstered by volunteers and mercenaries. Emperor Leopold V, aware of Vienna's importance, has fled to rally a relief force, leaving Starhemberg to hold the city. Kara Mustafa sends an ultimatum: surrender, and Vienna will be spared. Resist and face destruction. The defenders refuse, and the siege begins. The Ottomans encircle the city, digging trenches and positioning their cannons. The bombardment is relentless, shaking Vienna's walls and filling the air with smoke and dust. Sappers tunnel beneath the fortifications, planting explosives to create breaches. Inside, the defenders endure hunger, disease, and the constant threat of assault, but Starhemberg's leadership keeps morale intact. Kara Mustafa's strategy is methodical but flawed. He believes Vienna will fall quickly, so he delays a full-scale assault, relying on artillery and starvation to weaken the defenders. This decision, born of confidence, is his first misstep. He underestimates the city's resilience and fails to account for the gathering storm beyond Vienna's walls. The Holy League, a coalition of Poland, the Holy Roman Empire, Venice, and others, is forming to save the city. At its head is John III Sobieski, whose winged hussars are a force of legend. Kara Mustafa, aware of the coalition, dismisses it as too distant and divided to pose a threat. He neglects to fortify his rear, focusing instead on the siege. This is the fatal mistake, a miscalculation that will cost him everything. As August turns to September, Vienna's plight grows desperate. Food runs low, and the walls bear scars from relentless bombardment. Yet the defenders hold, their courage a beacon in the chaos. Outside, Sobieski's army approaches, its banners cresting the hills of Kahlenberg. The stage is set for a battle that will decide the empire's fate. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the torchlit trenches around Vienna, the distant hoofbeats of approaching cavalry, and the weight of a choice that will echo through time. Let this story carry you as we near the moment when ambition meets destiny on the fields of Vienna, as the night enfolds you in its quiet embrace. Imagine a city under siege, its walls trembling under the thunder of cannons, its people clinging to hope amidst the chaos. It is July 1683, and Vienna, the heart of the Habsburg Empire, stands encircled by the might of the Ottoman Empire. The air is thick with the scent of gunpowder, the ground scarred by trenches, and the horizon darkened by the banners of an army that seeks to reshape the world. At its helm is Kara Mustafa Pasha, a grand vizier whose ambition burns like a flame, driving his vast host toward a prize that could secure Ottoman dominance for centuries. As you settle deeper into the calm of this moment, let the story of this fateful siege unfold, a tale of endurance, strategy, and a misstep that will echo through history. Breathe slowly, and let the past carry you to the walls of Vienna, where an empire's fate hangs in the balance. The Ottoman army, over 100,000 strong, arrives at Vienna's outskirts on July 14, 1683. It is a force unlike any the city has faced, a sea of soldiers stretching across the plains, their tents a colourful mosaic under the summer sun. Janissaries, clad in their distinctive blue and red, march with disciplined precision, their muskets ready. Sipahi cavalry, their sabres gleaming, patrol the perimeter, while auxiliaries, Crimean Tatars, Balkan irregulars, and Arab tribesmen add to the army's diversity. Massive cannons dragged from Istanbul are positioned to batter the city's walls, their barrels etched with intricate designs, their power unmatched. Kara Mustafa Pasha, resplendent in silk and gold, oversees the encampment from his grand tent, a palace of its own, adorned with treasures. His confidence is unshaken. He believes Vienna, with its outnumbered garrison, will fall swiftly. Vienna, however, is no easy prize. Perched on the Danube, it is a fortress city, its walls reinforced with bastions and towers, its moat deep and treacherous. Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, the commander of the garrison, has prepared for this moment. With fewer than 15,000 men, soldiers, volunteers, and mercenaries, he faces a daunting task, but his resolve is ironclad. The city's defences, built to withstand medieval sieges, have been modernized, with earthworks and artillery to counter the Ottoman cannons. Starhemberg has cleared the suburbs to deny the enemy cover, stockpiled food and ammunition, and rallied the citizens to defend their home. Emperor Leopold I, the Habsburg ruler, has fled to rally a relief force, leaving Starhemberg to hold Vienna at all costs. Kara Mustafa sends an ultimatum to the city. Surrender, and Vienna will be spared. Resist, and face annihilation. Starhemberg, standing atop the ramparts, surveys the Ottoman host and refuses. The siege begins, and the Ottoman war machine springs into action. Trenches are dug, forming a network that encircles the city like a noose. Artillery batteries are established, their cannons unleashing a relentless barrage. The ground shakes as massive stone balls crash into Vienna's walls, sending clouds of dust into the air. Sappers, skilled in the art of siegecraft, tunnel beneath the fortifications, planting explosives to create breaches. The defenders, outnumbered but determined, respond with their own artillery, firing from the walls to disrupt the Ottoman works. Skirmishes erupt as Ottoman troops test the defences, only to be repelled by musket fire and boiling oil. Inside Vienna, life becomes a test of endurance. The constant roar of cannons keeps the citizens awake, their nerves frayed by the threat of assault. Food is rationed and water is scarce as the Ottomans cut off supply lines. Starhemberg moves among his men, his calm presence a beacon of hope. He organizes repairs to the walls, oversees the distribution of supplies, and encourages the defenders to hold firm. Priests lead prayers in the city's churches, their voices rising above the din of war. The citizens, from bakers to noblemen, contribute to the defense, hauling stones to reinforce the walls or tending to the wounded. Yet the strain is palpable. Disease begins to spread, and morale wavers as the siege drags into August. Kara Mustafa, confident in his strategy, believes the city's fall is inevitable. He delays a full-scale assault, relying on his artillery and sappers to weaken the defenses. His plan is to starve Vienna into submission, avoiding the heavy losses of a direct attack. This decision, born of caution and hubris, is his first misstep. The defenders, though stretched, are resilient, and Starhemberg's leadership keeps them united. Kara Mustafa's intelligence report suggests the Habsburgs are struggling to muster a relief force, and he dismisses rumors of a growing coalition. He believes the Holy League, a union of Poland, the Holy Roman Empire, Venice, and others, is too divided to act swiftly. His focus remains on the siege, his army digging deeper trenches and firing ever larger cannons. Yet beyond Vienna's walls, a storm is gathering. The Holy League, led by King John III Sobieski of Poland, is mobilizing. Sobieski, a warrior king with a reputation for bold tactics, commands a diverse force, including the winged hussars, cavalry whose winged armor makes them a terrifying sight. The Polish army, joined by troops from Bavaria, Saxony, and the Habsburgs, marches toward Vienna, their banners cresting the hills. Kara Mustafa, informed of their approach, underestimates their strength. He assumes his vast army, still outnumbering the coalition, can handle any relief force. He neglects to fortify his rear, leaving his camp vulnerable. This is the seed of the fatal mistake, a miscalculation that will unravel his plans and the empire's future. As August turns to September, the siege intensifies. The Ottomans detonate mines beneath Vienna's walls, creating breaches that invite assault. Starhemberg's men rush to repair the damage, their hands blistered from hauling stones. Ottoman troops launch probing attacks, testing the defenders' resolve, but each is repelled with heavy losses. Inside the city, hunger gnaws at the population, and the wounded fill makeshift hospitals. Yet hope persists. Scouts report sightings of the relief army, their fires dotting the hills of Kahlenberg. Starhemberg sends messengers through Ottoman lines, coordinating with Sobieski and urging the defenders to hold on. The stage is set for a confrontation that will decide Vienna's fate and the empire's. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the torchlit trenches around Vienna, the weary faces of the defenders, and the distant hoofbeats of an approaching army. The Ottoman Empire, vast and proud, stands on the brink of triumph or disaster, its grand vizier blinded by ambition. Let this story carry you as we approach the moment when a single choice will alter history's course. As the stars shine softly overhead, picture a city clinging to survival, its walls scarred by cannon fire, its people bound by a fragile thread of hope. It is September 1683, and Vienna remains under siege, encircled by the Ottoman Empire's vast army. The air hums with tension, the ground littered with the debris of war, and the horizon pulses with the promise of a coming storm. Kara Mustafa Pasha, the Grand Vizier, stands poised to claim his greatest prize, his ambition driving an army that seems unstoppable. Yet, beyond the hills, a coalition gathers led by a king whose courage will challenge the might of an empire. As you settle into the calm of this moment, let the story of this pivotal moment unfold, a tale of courage, miscalculation, and a mistake that will reshape the world. Breathe deeply and let the past guide you to the eve of a battle that will echo through time. The Siege of Vienna has entered its second month, and the city is a shadow of itself. The walls, once proud, bear the scars of relentless bombardment, their stones cracked and crumbling. The moat is filled with debris, and the air is thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder. Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, Vienna's commander, moves tirelessly among his men, his voice steady despite the strain. His garrison, now fewer than 10,000, is battered but unbroken, their muskets and cannons still answering the Ottoman barrage. Food is nearly gone and disease stalks the streets, yet the defenders hold firm, driven by the knowledge that Vienna's fall would open Europe to conquest. Citizens, from children to the elderly, aid the effort, carrying water, tending wounds, or praying in the shadow of St. Stephen's Cathedral. Kara Mustafa Pasha, encamped outside the city, remains confident. His army, though weary from weeks of siege work, is vast. Its trenches and earthworks a testament to Ottoman engineering. The Grand Vizier's tent, adorned with silk and silver, is a hub of activity where commanders plan assaults and sappers report on their tunnels. Kara Mustafa's strategy is unchanged: weaken Vienna's defenses through bombardment and starvation, then force a surrender. He has detonated several mines, creating breaches in the walls, but he hesitates to launch a full assault, wary of the losses it would entail. His scouts report the city's desperation, and he believes surrender is imminent. This delay, rooted in his belief in victory, is a critical error, giving Vienna's defenders time to regroup and the relief army time to approach. The Holy League, led by King John III Sobieski of Poland, is now a tangible threat. Sobieski, a seasoned commander, has rallied a coalition of 70,000 men, Poles, Bavarians, Saxons, and Habsburg troops, united by the urgency of saving Vienna. The winged hussars, Poland's elite cavalry, are the heart of this force, their armor adorned with wings that create a fearsome sound as they charge. Sobieski's army camps on the hills of Kahlenberg, overlooking the Ottoman encampment. Messengers slip through Ottoman lines, coordinating with Starhemberg and planning a decisive strike. Kara Mustafa, informed of the coalition's approach, remains dismissive. He believes his army's size and the fatigue of the relief force will ensure victory in any field battle. He focuses on the siege, neglecting to fortify his camp's rear or reposition his troops for a broader engagement. Inside Vienna, hope flickers like a candle in the wind. Starhemberg's scouts report the coalition's arrival, and bonfires on Kahlenberg signal their presence. The defenders, though starving and exhausted, rally at the prospect of relief. Starhemberg orders the remaining artillery to fire salvos, disrupting Ottoman preparations and signaling to Sobieski that Vienna still stands. The citizens, gaunt and weary, join in the effort, repairing breaches and manning the walls. Priests lead processions, their chants a counterpoint to the roar of cannons. The tension is palpable as both sides know the decisive moment is near. Kara Mustafa's army, meanwhile, faces its own challenges. The long siege has strained supplies and disease has taken a toll. The Janissaries, though disciplined, grow restless, their loyalty to the Grand Vizier tested by weeks of grueling work. The Sipahis, stationed on the flanks, report skirmishes with Habsburg scouts, a sign of the approaching enemy. Kara Mustafa, however, remains focused on Vienna. He orders intensified bombardment, hoping to force a breach before the relief army can strike. His sappers detonate another mine, collapsing a section of the Lull bastion, but the defenders quickly seal the gap. Kara Mustafa's hesitation to launch a full assault, combined with his failure to prepare for the coalition, deepens the fatal mistake that will soon undo him. On September 11, 1683, the Holy League finalizes its plan. Sobieski, a master of tactics, positions his forces on Kahlenberg Hill, using the terrain to mask their numbers. He coordinates with Starhemberg, ensuring the garrison will sally forth when the attack begins. The coalition's army is diverse: Polish hussars, German infantry, Austrian cavalry, but united by purpose. Sobieski, charismatic and resolute, inspires his men with speeches of faith and freedom. The Ottomans, spread thin across their siege lines, are vulnerable to a coordinated assault. Kara Mustafa, informed of the enemy's proximity, deploys some troops to guard his flanks but keeps the bulk of his army focused on Vienna. His underestimation of Sobieski's resolve and the coalition's unity is the final piece of his catastrophic miscalculation. As the eve of battle dawns, Vienna is a city on the brink. The defenders, weakened but defiant, prepare for what may be their final stand. The Ottoman camp, a sprawling city of tents, buzzes with activity, unaware of the storm about to break. On Kahlenberg, the coalition's campfires burn, their light a promise of deliverance. Kara Mustafa, in his gilded tent, dreams of triumph, blind to the forces aligning against him. The stage is set for a clash that will decide the fate of empires. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the scarred walls of Vienna, the flicker of hope in the defenders' eyes, and the distant thunder of hooves on Kahlenberg Hill. Let this story carry you as we stand on the threshold of a battle that will change history forever. As the night deepens its hold, imagine a landscape transformed by the fury of war, where hills rise like silent witnesses to the clash of destinies, and the air vibrates with the promise of thunder. It is September 12, 1683, and the fields outside Vienna are alive with the tension of impending doom. The Ottoman Empire, its vast army encircling the beleaguered city, stands on the cusp of triumph, its Grand Vizier, Kara Mustafa Pasha, envisioning a legacy etched in the annals of conquest. Yet, from the heights of Kahlenberg Hill, a coalition force gathers, led by a Polish king whose resolve will shatter illusions of invincibility. As you settle into the serene flow of this moment, let the story of the Battle of Vienna unfold, a tale of daring charges, shattered dreams, and a fatal mistake that will mark the beginning of an empire's end. Breathe gently, and let the past transport you to the heart of the storm, where history pivots on the edge of a blade. The dawn breaks over Kahlenberg Hill with a pale light, casting long shadows across the assembled ranks of the Holy League. King John III Sobieski, at 54, a veteran of countless campaigns, surveys his army from horseback, his eyes sharp beneath a furrowed brow. He commands a force of some 70,000 men, a tapestry of nations united against a common foe: Polish hussars with their winged lances, Bavarian infantry in gleaming cuirasses, Saxon artillerymen positioning their cannons, and Habsburg cavalry ready to strike. Sobieski's strategy is bold yet precise. Use the high ground to mask their approach, then launch a coordinated assault on the Ottoman rear while Vienna's garrison sallies forth from the walls. Messengers have slipped through the night to Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, coordinating the timing to the hour. The Polish king, a devout Catholic, murmurs a prayer, his faith as much a weapon as his sword. This is no mere battle. It is a crusade to save Christendom's gateway. Below in the Ottoman encampment, Kara Mustafa Pasha stirs in his opulent tent, unaware of the full scale of the threat. Reports from scouts have reached him overnight. The relief army is larger than anticipated, positioned on Kahlenberg with a commanding view of the siege lines. Yet the Grand Vizier clings to his confidence, dismissing the coalition as a ragtag assembly too weary from the march to pose real danger. His army, still numbering over 100,000, is spread thin. Janissaries manning the trenches around Vienna, Sipahi cavalry patrolling the flanks, and auxiliaries guarding the supply trains. Kara Mustafa orders a detachment of 10,000 to Kahlenberg to probe the enemy, but he keeps the core of his forces focused on the city, believing a swift repulse will end the threat. This division of attention, born of overconfidence, is the culmination of his fatal mistake. Underestimating the unity and resolve of his foes, leaving his camp exposed to a devastating flank attack. As the morning sun climbs, the Holy League begins its descent. Sobieski divides his forces into three wings: the left, under Bavarian General Lorraine; the center, held by Saxon Duke John George; and the right, led by the Polish king himself, with the winged hussars as his spearhead. The infantry advances first, supported by artillery that opens fire on the Ottoman positions below. Cannonballs arc through the sky, crashing into the siege works and sowing confusion among the Janissaries. Ottoman gunners respond, their massive pieces roaring in defiance, but the elevation favors the attackers, their shots more accurate and telling. Skirmishes erupt along the slopes, with Crimean Tatar horsemen charging uphill, only to be met by disciplined volleys from the German infantry. The air fills with the acrid smoke of black powder, the cries of the wounded mingling with the clash of steel. Inside Vienna, Starhemberg senses the moment. From the ramparts he watches the battle unfold. The flashes of gunfire on Kahlenberg a signal of hope. With the remaining strength of his garrison, barely 4,000 fit for duty, he orders a sally. Gates creak open, and defenders pour forth, their bayonets fixed, their faces gaunt but fierce. They strike the nearest Ottoman trenches, catching the besiegers off guard. Janissaries, focused on repairing a recent mine breach, scramble to form lines, but the sudden assault disrupts their rhythm. Starhemberg's men push forward, capturing Ottoman cannons and turning them on their former owners. The coordination is imperfect. The sally lacks the full support of the relief army, but it ties down thousands of Ottoman troops, preventing reinforcements from reaching Kahlenberg. On the hill, the battle intensifies. Lorraine's Bavarians clash with Ottoman Sipahs in a brutal melee, swords flashing in the sunlight. The ground, slick with mud from recent rains, turns treacherous, horses slipping and men falling. Sobieski in the center holds back his hussars, waiting for the perfect moment. The Saxons advance steadily, their pikes forming an impenetrable wall against Tatar arrows. Kara Mustafa, now alarmed, dispatches more troops, elite Janissaries and Akunja raiders, to bolster the defense. Messengers gallop between his tent and the front, urging a counterattack, but the Grand Vizier's hesitation proves costly. His army, exhausted from 2 months of siege work, lacks the cohesion for a rapid response. Disease has thinned their ranks, and supplies run low, with wagons bogged in the mud. By midday, the tide begins to turn. Sobieski, seeing the Ottoman lines waver, unleashes his winged hussars. 3,000 strong, they form up in a wedge, their wings, frames of eagle feathers attached to their backs, creating a terrifying whoosh as they trot forward. Lances lowered, sabers drawn, they charge down the slopes in a human avalanche, the earth trembling under their hooves. The Ottoman defenders, a mix of infantry and cavalry, falter at the sight. Tatar horsemen fire volleys of arrows, but the hussars' heavy armor deflects most, and their momentum is unstoppable. They crash into the Ottoman center, lances piercing shields, horses trampling foes. The Sipahis, brave but outnumbered, countercharge, but the hussars' weight breaks them, sending riders tumbling into the chaos. Kara Mustafa, from his vantage point, watches in growing horror. The Grand Vizier's tent, once a symbol of imperial might, now feels like a cage. He orders reserves forward, more Janissaries, their green banners a flash of color amid the smoke, but the reinforcements arrive piecemeal, unable to stem the flood. The Ottoman lines buckle, trenches collapsing under the weight of the assault. Starhemberg's sally from Vienna gains ground, linking up with Lorraine's Bavarians in a pincer that squeezes the besiegers. Panic spreads through the Ottoman ranks. Auxiliaries flee, abandoning cannons and supplies. Kara Mustafa, his face ashen, realizes the battle is lost. He mounts his horse, rallying what loyalists he can, and orders a retreat. The Grand Vizier's dream of Vienna crumbles as his army disintegrates, the once mighty host reduced to a routed mob. As evening falls, the field is a tableau of carnage. The Holy League claims victory, their cheers echoing across the hills. Sobieski enters Vienna to the adulation of its people, Starhemberg embracing him as a savior. The Ottomans abandon their siege works, leaving behind 150 cannons, thousands of tents, and the Grand Vizier's own treasury, silks, jewels, and gold scattered like forgotten dreams. Kara Mustafa flees eastward, his legacy in tatters. The Battle of Kahlenberg is not just a defeat. It is a psychological rupture, shattering the Ottoman aura of invincibility. Europe, long cowed by the Sultan's shadow, now sees a crack in the edifice. As you drift towards sleep, envision the winged hussars thundering down the hill, the fading banners of a retreating empire, and the quiet dawn of a new era. Let this triumph carry you as we witness the unraveling of a titan. As the quiet of night settles once more, picture the aftermath of a shattered dream, where the fields of Vienna lie strewn with the remnants of ambition, and the echoes of battle fade into the whisper of wind. It is the evening of September 12, 1683, and the Ottoman Empire, so close to glory, reels from a catastrophe that will scar its soul. Kara Mustafa Pasha, the Grand Vizier whose hubris ignited this campaign, rides through the dusk, his once proud army a shadow of itself, fleeing toward the safety of Belgrade. In Vienna, the defenders and their saviors celebrate a miracle, but for the Ottomans the wound runs deep, a fatal mistake that exposes the fragility of an empire long thought eternal. As you ease into the tranquility of this moment, let the story of defeat and reckoning unfold, a tale of flight, recrimination, and the slow bleed of power. Breathe softly, and let the past draw you into the twilight of a fallen star. The retreat from Vienna is a disorderly exodus, a far cry from the triumphant march that began months earlier. Kara Mustafa, his armor dulled by dust, leads a remnant of his force, perhaps 20,000 men, eastward along the Danube, harried by pursuing Habsburg cavalry. The Grand Vizier's mind races with justifications, the coalition's unexpected unity, the betrayal of spies, the treachery of subordinates. But deep down, he knows the truth. His delay in assaulting Vienna, his dismissal of the relief threat, his failure to secure his flanks. The fatal mistake was not in ambition, but in blindness, a refusal to see the world beyond the glow of his own vision. Behind him, the Ottoman camp lies plundered, its treasures, carpets from Persia, gold from the Sultan's coffers, falling into enemy hands. Abandoned cannons rust in the mud, silent witnesses to squandered might. Word of the defeat reaches Istanbul like a thunderclap, rippling through the bazaars and palaces. Sultan Mehmed I in Edirne receives the news from panting couriers, his face paling as the scope unfolds. The Sultan, who had pinned his hopes on this campaign to revive Ottoman prestige, feels the sting of betrayal. Kara Mustafa's letters arrive, laced with excuses, blaming the Janissaries' cowardice and the Tatars' desertion. But Mehmed, advised by his mother Turhan Sultan and the palace ulama, sees the Grand Vizier's overreach for what it is. The empire cannot afford such a loss. Already strained by wars and unrest, it now faces a vengeful Europe united in purpose. The Sultan's court buzzes with recriminations, viziers whisper of Kara Mustafa's Albanian roots, poets compose laments for the fallen, and the Janissaries, spared the worst of the rout, demand scapegoats. Kara Mustafa reaches Belgrade in late September, his arrival a somber affair. The fortress city, a key Ottoman stronghold on the Danube, offers temporary refuge, but even here, doubts fester. Local commanders who had contributed troops to the campaign eye the Grand Vizier with suspicion, their own losses fresh in memory. Kara Mustafa attempts to rally, sending dispatches to Edirne outlining plans for a counter-offensive, but his words ring hollow. Desertions plague the remnants of his army. Sipahis slip away to their estates. Auxiliaries vanish into the Balkans. The Grand Vizier, isolated in his command tent, pores over maps dreaming of redemption, a strike at the coalition's flanks, a blockade of the Danube. Yet, the momentum has shifted. Habsburg forces, emboldened, push into Ottoman-held Hungary, reclaiming fortresses with ease. The empire mourns in silence, but the damage is profound. The loss at Vienna costs 15,000 Ottoman lives, untold wealth, and the psychological edge that once cowed rivals. The Holy League presses its advantage, launching the Great Turkish War, a decade-long counter-offensive that reclaims Hungary and threatens the Balkans. Mehmed IV, shaken, withdraws to Edirne's hunting grounds, his later years marked by failed campaigns and Janissary revolts. In 1687 he is deposed, ending a reign defined by that one catastrophic choice. The Ottoman system, rigid and tradition-bound, struggles to adapt, its decline accelerating as Europe surges forward. Yet amid the ruin, glimmers of resilience persist. Ottoman artisans in Istanbul craft new cannons, scholars debate reforms, and the Sultan's heirs vow renewal. The fatal mistake at Vienna is a lesson carved in stone. Pride blinds, unity conquers, and empires fall not from without, but from the hubris within. As you drift towards sleep, picture Kara Mustafa's final gaze on the Danube's flow, the scattered banners on Kahlenberg's slopes, and the quiet mending of a wounded world. Let this reckoning soothe you as we trace the empire's long fade into history's embrace. As the night wraps you in its gentle hush, picture a world reshaped by the clash of empires, where the fields around Vienna lie silent, strewn with the relics of a shattered ambition. It is late 1683, and the Ottoman Empire, once an unassailable titan, reels from a defeat that has cracked its aura of invincibility. The Battle of Kahlenberg, fought on September 12th, has left the Ottoman army in disarray, its Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha fleeing in disgrace, his dream of conquering Vienna buried in the dust of retreat. In the city, the defenders celebrate a miraculous deliverance, while across Europe, a coalition grows bolder, sensing the empire's vulnerability. As you settle into the calm of this moment, let the story of this pivotal aftermath unfold, a tale of loss, regrouping, and the slow erosion of a once mighty power. Breathe deeply and let the past guide you through the twilight of an empire's glory. The Ottoman retreat from Vienna is a chaotic unraveling, a stark contrast to the disciplined march that began months earlier. Kara Mustafa Pasha, his pride wounded, leads a tattered remnant of his army, perhaps 20,000 men, toward Belgrade, their path dogged by Habsburg cavalry and local militias. The Grand Vizier's mind churns with desperation, crafting excuses to shield himself from the Sultan's wrath. Behind him, the fields of Kahlenberg are littered with the detritus of defeat, abandoned cannons, their barrels cold, tents torn by the wind, and wagons mired in mud, their contents plundered by victorious coalition troops. The loss is staggering: 15,000 Ottoman soldiers dead, thousands more deserted, and a treasury's worth of gold, silk, and weaponry seized by the Holy League. The Grand Vizier's own tent, a symbol of Ottoman opulence, is now a trophy in Vienna, its treasures displayed as proof of triumph. In Istanbul, the news arrives like a shadow creeping over the city. Couriers, exhausted from their ride, deliver reports to Topkapi Palace, where Sultan Mehmed IV resides in Edirne, his hunting retreats abandoned for urgent counsels. The Sultan, now 41, feels the weight of betrayal. He had entrusted Kara Mustafa with the empire's honor, dreaming of a victory to rival Mehmed the Conqueror's capture of Constantinople. Instead, the defeat at Vienna exposes the empire's fragility, its vastness no longer a guarantee of strength. The court, a labyrinth of intrigue, buzzes with blame. The Valide Sultan Turhan urges decisive action, while the ulama, the religious scholars, issue pronouncements condemning the Grand Vizier's hubris. Merchants in the Grand Bazaar whisper of economic strain as the war's cost, hundreds of thousands of gold akçe, drains the treasury further. Kara Mustafa's fate is sealed in Belgrade. On December 25, 1683, imperial orders arrive, carried by grim-faced envoys. The Grand Vizier, summoned to a meeting in his tent, is surrounded by loyalists who sense the end. The Sultan's decree, backed by a fetwa from the chief mufti, accuses Kara Mustafa of incompetence and disobedience. As the silken cord tightens around his neck, a traditional Ottoman execution sparing the shedding of noble blood, Kara Mustafa's dreams of glory fade. His body is buried quietly, his name struck from official records, his legacy reduced to a cautionary tale. The new Grand Vizier, Siladar Damatali Pasha, takes command, tasked with salvaging the empire's position on the Danube frontier. But the damage is done. Vienna's defeat is not just a military loss, but a psychological wound, eroding the confidence that once defined Ottoman rule. In Vienna, the mood is one of exhausted jubilation. Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, hailed as the city's savior, walks the scarred ramparts, his gaunt face lit by the glow of victory. The citizens, starved and weary, emerge from cellars to cheer King John III Sobieski, whose winged hussars turned the tide. Sobieski, ever the diplomat, writes to Pope Innocent XIII, framing the battle as a divine miracle. The Hofburg Palace hosts feasts where tales of the hussars' charge are retold, their winged armor now legend. The captured Ottoman treasures, swords, banners, and Kara Mustafa's own coffee beans become relics of triumph displayed in churches across Europe. Yet Sobieski knows the war is far from over. The Holy League, forged in the crucible of Vienna, sees an opportunity to push back the Ottoman frontier, reclaiming lands lost over centuries. The Great Turkish War begins in earnest as the Holy League seizes the initiative. Habsburg forces, led by Charles of Lorraine, pursue the retreating Ottomans, capturing fortresses in Hungary like Esztergom and Buda. Venetian navies raid Ottoman ports in the Aegean, disrupting trade. Poland, emboldened, strengthens its position, while Bavaria and Saxony commit more troops. The coalition's unity, a stark contrast to Europe's usual divisions, is a direct result of Kara Mustafa's miscalculation. He had assumed the Christian powers too fractious to unite, but Vienna's siege galvanized them, creating a coalition that will challenge the Ottomans for decades. The empire, stretched across 3 continents, struggles to respond, its resources depleted, its morale shaken. In Istanbul, the defeat sparks introspection. The Janissaries, blamed by Kara Mustafa for the rout, face scrutiny, their privileges questioned by reform-minded viziers. Yet, their political power makes them untouchable, a festering problem for future sultans. The economy, already strained, buckles under the loss of war material and trade disruptions. Provincial governors, tasked with raising new levies, report unrest as peasants and merchants chafe at taxes. The ulama call for a return to piety, seeing Vienna as divine punishment for corruption. Mehmed IV, shaken but resolute, vows to continue the fight, appointing commanders to hold the Balkan frontier. Yet, the empire's centralized system, once its strength, now hinders rapid adaptation, its bureaucracy slow to meet the coalition's relentless pace. The loss at Vienna reverberates beyond the battlefield. European courts from Paris to Moscow take note of Ottoman vulnerability. Russia, under the Romanovs, begins eyeing the Black Sea, long an Ottoman lake. The Safavids in Persia, sensing weakness, press their border disputes. The empire, though still vast, feels the pinch of encirclement, its enemies growing bolder. Mehmed IV, retreating to his hunting lodges, grapples with the reality that his reign, once filled with promise, is now defined by a single, catastrophic choice. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the quiet fields of Vienna, the scattered remnants of Ottoman banners, and the distant murmur of a coalition rising. Let this aftermath soothe you as we trace the empire's path into a gathering storm. As the stars cast their gentle glow, envision a world where empires grapple for survival, where the echoes of a lost battle ripple across continents, reshaping borders and destinies. It is 1684, and the Ottoman Empire, wounded by its defeat at Vienna, faces a new reality. The Holy League, emboldened by triumph, launches a counter-offensive, determined to roll back centuries of Ottoman conquest. In Istanbul, the court of Sultan Mehmed IV wrestles with the fallout, as the empire's vast machinery strains to hold its ground. The fatal mistake of Kara Mustafa Pasha, whose ambition blinded him to the coalition's strength, has set in motion a war that will test the empire's resilience. As you ease into the tranquility of this moment, let the story of the Great Turkish War unfold, a tale of battles, reforms, and the slow unraveling of a titan. Breathe softly, and let the past carry you through the tides of conflict. The Great Turkish War, sparked by the Ottoman defeat at Vienna, marks a turning point. The Holy League, comprising the Habsburg Empire, Poland, Venice, and later Russia, seizes the initiative, launching campaigns across multiple fronts. In Hungary, Habsburg forces under Charles of Lorraine advance with purpose, their artillery and disciplined infantry outmatching the Ottoman garrisons. In 1684, they besiege Buda, the Ottoman stronghold that has guarded Hungary since Suleiman's time. The siege is brutal, with cannons pounding the fortress walls and defenders fighting to the last. By 1686, Buda falls, its capture a symbolic blow, erasing a century of Ottoman control. The Habsburgs press on, reclaiming Esztergom, Vas, and other fortresses, their banners replacing Ottoman crescents across the Hungarian plains. Venice, meanwhile, strikes at the Ottoman Empire's maritime flanks. Venetian fleets, led by Admiral Francesco Morosini, raid the Peloponnese and Dalmatia, capturing key ports like Preveza and Coron. These losses disrupt Ottoman trade, already weakened by the shift of global routes to the Atlantic. The Venetian navy, equipped with modern galleys, outmaneuvers Ottoman ships, their crews demoralized by the empire's setbacks. Poland, under Sobieski, secures its southern borders, while Russia joins the Holy League in 1686, launching campaigns in Crimea. The Crimean Tatars, long Ottoman allies, find their steppe lands under siege, forcing the empire to divert troops from Europe. This multi-front war exposes the Ottoman system's greatest weakness, its inability to coordinate across vast distances. In Istanbul, the court struggles to respond. Mehmed IV, shaken by Vienna, relies on his new Grand Vizier, Siladar Damat Ali Pasha, to stabilize the frontier. Ali Pasha, a capable administrator, raises new levies and fortifies Balkan strongholds like Belgrade and Niš. Yet the empire's resources are stretched thin. The Janissaries, still reeling from Vienna, resist calls for reform, their loyalty wavering as defeats mount. Their refusal to adopt European-style tactics, such as disciplined infantry formations, leaves Ottoman armies vulnerable. The Sipahi cavalry, reliant on land grants, struggle to maintain numbers as tax revenues dwindle. Provincial governors, squeezed for funds, face rebellions from overtaxed peasants, particularly in Anatolia and the Balkans. The economy, already fragile, buckles under the war's demands. The loss of Hungarian territories cuts off silver mines, a key source of revenue. Inflation, fueled by Europe's influx of New World silver, erodes the value of the akçe, the Ottoman currency. Merchants in Istanbul's Grand Bazaar hoard goods, fearing further disruption, while trade routes through the Mediterranean falter under Venetian raids. The treasury, drained by the Vienna campaign, cannot fund the armies needed to counter the Holy League. Mehmed IV, urged by his advisors, imposes new taxes, sparking unrest in cities like Aleppo and Damascus. The ulama, sensing divine disfavor, call for a return to traditional values, further complicating reform efforts. By 1687, the Ottoman situation worsens. At the Second Battle of Mohaç, a bitter irony of history, Habsburg forces crush an Ottoman army, reversing Suleiman's triumph of 1526. The defeat shatters morale, and Mehmed IV faces growing discontent. The Janissaries, blaming the Sultan for their losses, stage a revolt in Istanbul, demanding his abdication. In November 1687, Mehmed is deposed, replaced by his brother, Suleiman II, a reclusive figure unprepared for rule. The empire, now led by a weak sultan and a fractured court, struggles to unify against the Holy League's relentless advance. Suleiman II appoints Köprülü Fazıl Mustafa Pasha, a scion of the reformist Köprülü family, as Grand Vizier, hoping to stem the tide. Fazıl Mustafa proves a capable leader, launching counterattacks that briefly reclaim Niš and Belgrade in 1690. His reforms, reorganizing the Janissaries, streamlining taxes, and modernizing artillery, offer a glimmer of hope, yet these efforts come too late. The Holy League's momentum is unstoppable, and internal divisions hamper Ottoman unity. In 1691, Fazıl Mustafa falls in battle at Slankamen, a crushing blow to reform hopes. The war drags on each year, eroding Ottoman territory and prestige. By 1699, the Treaty of Karlowitz formalizes the empire's losses. Hungary, Transylvania, and parts of Croatia and Slovenia are ceded to the Habsburgs, while Venice gains the Peloponnese. It is the first time the Ottomans sign a treaty as the defeated party, a humiliation that reverberates through Istanbul. The Treaty of Karlowitz marks the end of the Great Turkish War and the beginning of a new reality. The Ottoman Empire, once the terror of Europe, is now the sick man, its borders shrinking, its confidence shaken. The fatal mistake at Vienna, rooted in Kara Mustafa's hubris, has unleashed a cascade of consequences, exposing weaknesses that will haunt the empire for centuries. Yet, even in defeat, the Ottoman spirit endures. Artisans craft new mosaics, poets pen verses of resilience, and commanders dream of recovery. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the quiet Danube flowing past fallen fortresses, the fading crescents of a retreating empire, and the distant hope of renewal. Let this war's end soothe you as we trace the empire's long descent into history's shadow. As the quiet veil of night descends, imagine a grand hall where the air hangs heavy with the scent of incense and ink, where maps unfurl like the pages of fate, and envoys from rival empires gather under chandeliers that flicker like uncertain stars. It is January 1699, and the Ottoman Empire, battered by 16 years of relentless war, stands at a crossroads of concession and survival. The Great Turkish War, ignited by the fatal misstep at Vienna, has carved deep wounds into its territories, forcing sultans and viziers to confront a humbling reality. In the village of Karlowitz, now Sremski Karlovci, diplomats convene to redraw borders that have defined centuries of glory. As you settle into the serene rhythm of this moment, let the story of this pivotal treaty unfold, a tale of negotiation, loss, and the empire's fragile bid for renewal. Breathe gently and let the past whisper through the halls of diplomacy, guiding you toward the dawn of a diminished realm. The road to Karlowitz is paved with the debris of defeat. Since the catastrophe at Vienna in 1683, the Holy League has pressed its advantage with unyielding determination. Habsburg armies, led by commanders like Ludwig von Baden, have swept through Hungary, reclaiming fortresses that Suleiman the Magnificent once prized. Buda, the pearl of Ottoman Hungary, fell in 1686 after a siege that echoed the empire's own triumphs of old, its walls breached by European artillery far superior to the cannons abandoned on Kahlenberg's slopes. Venetian forces under the indomitable Francesco Morosini, dubbed the Peloponnesian, have ravaged the Morea, the Peloponnese, capturing Athens in 1687, a city whose Acropolis was scarred by Venetian bombardment, a Parthenon defaced in the heat of conquest. Poland, though Sobieski died in 1696, holds its gains, while Russia, newly allied, nibbles at the northern fringes, their Cossacks raiding Crimean Kanates. The Ottoman Empire, under a succession of sultans, has staggered under this onslaught. Mehmed IV's deposition in 1687 gave way to Suleiman II, a pious recluse whose reign was a desperate scramble for stability. Köprülü Fazıl Mustafa Pasha, the last of the great Köprülü viziers, briefly rallied the empire with victories at Niš in 1690, his reforms breathing life into the Janissaries and Sipahis. But his death at the Battle of Slankamen in 1691, cut down by a musket ball amid the Danube's mists, extinguished that spark. Ahmed II, who followed, faced further humiliations, including the loss of Belgrade in 1688, a fortress whose fall symbolized the unraveling of Balkan dominance. By 1695, Mustafa II ascended, young and ambitious, but the empire's coffers were empty, its armies depleted, and its spirit frayed. The war's toll is immense. Ottoman casualties number in the hundreds of thousands, their fields fallow from conscription, their trade routes choked by Venetian blockades. Inflation ravages the economy, the Akçe devalued to a shadow of its worth, while provincial revolts, Salali uprisings in Anatolia, drain what resources remain. The Janissaries, once the empire's sword, have become its thorn, their mutinies forcing Mustafa II to tread lightly. European innovations, bayonets, disciplined line infantry, and coordinated artillery exposed the obsolescence of Ottoman tactics, a legacy of the Vienna failure where Kara Mustafa's overconfidence ignored the changing tides of warfare. The fatal mistake, that hubris-fueled delay and underestimation, has snowballed into systemic collapse, compelling the empire to sue for peace. The Treaty of Karlowitz opens on January 16, 1699, in a Franciscan monastery near the Danube, a neutral ground brokered by England and the Netherlands as mediators. The Ottoman delegation, led by Grand Vizier Elmas Mehmed Pasha, arrives with a splendor masking desperation, silk robes, jeweled turbans, and a retinue of janissaries, but their maps show shrunken domains. Opposite them sit the Holy League's envoys, Habsburg's Count Kinsky, Poland's Stanislaw Poniatowski, Venice's Daniele Trevisan, and Russia's emissaries, their faces stern with victory. The room is a tableau of tension, maps spread across tables, quills poised over vellum. Elmas Mehmed, a veteran of Slankamen's fields, argues for minimal concessions, invoking Islamic law's aversion to ceding Dar al-Islam, the House of Islam. But the League demands restitution. Hungary's plains, the Morea's coasts, Podolia's fields. Negotiations drag through the winter, each session a delicate dance of concession and bluster. The Ottomans propose retaining Buda and Belgrade, but Habsburg insistence, backed by fresh armies under Prince Eugene of Savoy, forces retreat. Venice claims the Morea and Dalmatia, their naval superiority undeniable. Poland regains Podolia, lost to Ottoman vassals. Russia secures Azov on the Black Sea, a foothold piercing the Crimean shield. Elmas Mehmed resists, stalling with feasts and flattery, but plague ravages his camp. Claiming his life in May, his successor, Hussein, yields, signing on January 26, 1699. The treaty, spanning 365 articles, cedes two-thirds of Hungary, Transylvania as a Habsburg protectorate, the Morea to Venice, and Western Podolia to Poland. Only a sliver of Croatia remains Ottoman, a humiliating sliver. The treaty's terms are revolutionary. For the first time, the Ottomans negotiate as equals or inferiors with Christian powers, using European diplomatic norms rather than Islamic tribute systems. Borders are drawn with precision, surveyed by joint commissions, a far cry from the vague vassalages of old. The empire retains nominal suzerainty over Wallachia and Moldavia, but loses effective control. A 9-year truce offers breathing room, but the psychological blow is profound. In Istanbul, Mustafa II receives the news amid Janissary unrest, the streets echoing with murmurs of shame. Poets lament the Day of Karlowitz, a black mark beside Kosovo's tragedy. The ulama debate the treaty's legitimacy, some fatwas decrying it as apostasy, yet pragmatism prevails. The empire cannot sustain another war. Karlowitz accelerates decline, exposing structural rot. The loss of Hungarian revenues starves the treasury, exacerbating inflation and corruption. Janissary privileges untouched stifle military reform. Their guilds evolve into monopolies, choking innovation. The bureaucracy, bloated with sinecures, fails to adapt European techniques, while trade languishes as Dutch and English merchants bypass Ottoman routes. Yet, glimmers of response emerge. Mustafa II, chastened, experiments with Western advisors, importing French engineers for fortifications. The Köprülü legacy lingers, their emphasis on meritocracy influencing court appointments. In the provinces, local Ayan notables rise, filling power vacuums with pragmatic governance. The treaty's ripple effects reshape Europe. The Habsburgs consolidate a Danubian empire, Prince Eugene's genius ensuring Ottoman weakness. Venice, though triumphant, overextends, losing the Morea to Ottoman reconquest in 1718. Poland's gains are fleeting, partitioned later by neighbors. Russia, emboldened, pushes southward, clashing in the Russo-Turkish wars. For the Ottomans, Karlowitz is a mirror, reflecting the fatal mistake's legacy. Kara Mustafa's Vienna gamble, had it succeeded, might have forestalled this reckoning. Instead, it invited unity among foes, tipping the balance. As you drift towards sleep, envision the quills scratching at Karlowitz, the Danube's flow carrying away illusions of eternity, and the quiet resolve of an empire turning inward. Let this treaty's echo lull you as we explore the fragile reforms that follow. As the moon climbs high, casting silver light on minarets that pierce the Istanbul skyline, picture a court where whispers of change mingle with the rustle of ancient scrolls, where sultans grapple with the ghosts of fallen fortresses and the promise of renewal. It is the early 18th century, and the Ottoman Empire, scarred by Karlowitz's concessions, stirs from its stupor, seeking paths to vigor amid the ruins of pride. The fatal mistake at Vienna, that cascade of hubris and miscalculation, has humbled a giant, forcing introspection in palaces long accustomed to conquest. Under Mustafa II and his successors, tentative reforms take root, blending tradition with borrowed wisdom from a world the empire once dominated. As you ease into the peaceful cadence of this moment, let the story of these shadowed efforts unfold, a tale of innovation, resistance, and the empire's halting march toward modernity. Breathe softly, and let the past illuminate the flickering lamps of reform. Mustafa II, ascending in 1695 amid the war's fury, embodies the tension between legacy and adaptation. Young and vigorous, he dreams of reversing Karlowitz, launching the 1710-1711 campaign that briefly recaptures the Morea from Venice. Victory at the Battle of Petrovaradin in 1716 under Grand Vizier Damat Ali Pasha offers hope, but defeat at Belgrade the same year, again to Eugene of Savoy, underscores the empire's vulnerabilities. The Treaty of Passarowitz in 1718 cedes more, Belgrade, parts of Wallachia. Yet Mustafa presses for change. He invites French military advisors, establishing the French model for training select Janissary units in musketry and drill. Schools for engineers sprout in Istanbul, teaching geometry and fortification, their curricula drawn from Vauban's treatises, smuggled via Levantine merchants. Resistance is fierce. The Janissaries, guardians of tradition, view these infidel tactics as threats to their monopoly. In 1703, the Edirne incident sees them depose Mustafa during a march, forcing his return to Istanbul in humiliation. Reinstated, he curbs their excesses, executing ringleaders and reorganizing guilds, but the core remains a veto power, stifling deeper change. The ulama, pillars of orthodoxy, decry Western influences as corrupting, their fatwas a bulwark against secular education. Yet, Mustafa's reign plants seeds. The first printing press for secular books arrives in 1727 under his son Ahmed III, sparking the Tulip period, a brief efflorescence of arts and diplomacy. Ahmed III, 1703-1730, transforms the court into a garden of innovation. Inspired by Versailles, he builds pleasure pavilions along the Bosphorus, their fountains bubbling with French engineering. Ambassador Ibrahim Mutafarrika, a Hungarian convert, publishes the empire's first printed books, maps, histories, treatises on artillery, challenging scribal monopolies. Diplomatic missions to Paris yield clocks, globes, and ideas of absolutism, while the Lail Devri Tulip period sees poets like Nedim celebrate urbanity, their verses a counterpoint to martial gloom. Ahmed's viziers reform taxation, centralizing collection to bypass corruption, and modernize the navy with English shipwrights. The 1718 victory parade after Passarowitz dazzles with fireworks and European bands, a symbol of hybrid vigor, but extravagance breeds backlash. Patrona Halil's 1730 revolt, sparked by Janissary grievances over taxes and frivolous spending, topples Ahmed, ushering Mahmud Fash 1730-1754. The uprising razes tulip gardens, executes reformers, and reinforces conservatism, a reminder that change threatens entrenched powers. Mahmud treads cautiously, focusing on defense, fortifying the Danube with star-shaped bastions, importing Swedish gunners for the artillery corps. The Russo-Austrian Wars of 1736-1739 see mixed results. Gains in Azov, losses in Belgrade, but highlight progress. Ottoman infantry, drilled in linear tactics, holds against Russian charges. Diplomatic acumen shines in the Treaty of Belgrade, regaining territories through negotiation, a skill honed since Karlowitz. Under Osman III, 1754-1757, and Mustafa III, 1757-1774, reforms deepen amid external pressures. The empire faces Russia again in the 1768-1774 war, a disaster ending in the Treaty of Küçük-Kaynarca, ceding Crimea and Black Sea access, granting Russia protectorate over Orthodox subjects, a capitulation eroding sovereignty. Mustafa III, a reformer at heart, establishes the Sadaret printing house for military manuals and commissions translations of European works on ballistics. He creates the Hunaname Chronicles, documenting Ottoman history with an eye to lessons from Vienna's folly. Naval reforms under Cezayir Ghazi Hasan Pasha introduce copper sheathing for ships, extending their range against Russian fleets. Resistance persists. Janissary corps splinter into factions, their barracks economic fiefdoms. The Ayan, rising in places like Bosnia and Yanina, defy central edicts, their private armies a parallel power. Economic woes compound. Coffee houses, hubs of reformist debate, are regulated after 1766 fires, symbolizing control over ideas. Yet cultural exchange flourishes. Greek phanariotes serve as hospodars in the Danubian principalities, bridging east and west. Armenian merchants import clocks and compasses, fostering a merchant class attuned to global trade. Abdulhamid Ashtari's 1774-1789 inherits a realm on the brink. His reign, dominated by the 1787-1792 Russo-Austrian War, defeats at Fokshani and Rimnik expose lingering weaknesses. But Grand Vizier Koka Yusuf Pasha's cause of Nizam-e-Jadid, New Order troops, marks a milestone. Trained separately from Janissaries in European style, the Treaty of Jassy in 1792 halts Russian advance, but losses mount, fueling urgency. Selim III, the Velvet Sultan, emerges as the great reformer. His Nizam-e-Jadid army, a direct response to Vienna's lessons, 12,000 elite soldiers, uniformed in blue, drilled with flintlocks. Their barracks in Levin Chifli, a symbol of progress. Selim's edicts, the 1793 reform firman, centralize authority, curbing Ayam power and standardizing taxes. He founds engineering schools, the Muhendishani, teaching math and mechanics with French texts. Diplomatic overtures to Napoleon yield alliances, Ottoman envoys in Paris absorbing Enlightenment ideas. The 1807 Anglo-Ottoman Treaty modernizes trade, opening ports to British merchants. Yet the Janissaries revolt in 1807, deposing Selim, their Alamdar Mustafa Pasha, uprising a bloody failure. Mahmud Dedewa, 1808-1839, the destroyer, waits then strikes. In 1826, the auspicious incident massacres the Janissaries, their barracks burned, paving the way for a modern army. These reforms, born of Karlowitz's shadow, are the empire's antidote to Vienna's poison. Kara Mustafa's mistake a catalyst for change, however painful. As you drift towards sleep, picture the ink drying on reform edicts, the drill of new troops echoing in Üsküdar, and the Bosphorus carrying whispers of a reborn realm. Let this era of tentative light lull you, as we venture into the tempests of nationalism and decay. As the stars weave their gentle tapestry across the sky, imagine a city where minarets cast long shadows over bustling markets, where the Bosphorus murmurs secrets of a fading empire, and the air hums with the tension of change. It is the early 19th century, and the Ottoman Empire, once a colossus that shook the world, now staggers under the weight of its own history. The fatal mistake at Vienna in 1683, where Kara Mustafa Pasha's hubris invited a cascade of defeats, has left scars that time cannot heal. The Treaty of Karlowitz marked the empire's first major territorial loss, and the centuries since have seen its borders shrink, its prestige wane. Yet, in Istanbul's palaces, a new generation of sultans and reformers dares to dream of revival, their efforts a delicate dance between tradition and modernity. As you settle into the tranquil rhythm of this moment, let the story of the Tanzimat era unfold, a tale of reform, resistance, and the empire's struggle to hold its fractured domains. Breathe softly and let the past carry you through a twilight of transformation. The 19th century dawns with the Ottoman Empire. Dubbed the sick man of Europe, a phrase coined by Tsar Nicholas I of Russia to capture its vulnerability. The Great Turkish War and subsequent treaties stripped away Hungary, Transylvania, and the Morea, exposing weaknesses in military, economy, and governance. The Janissaries, once the empire's sword, have become its shackles, their rebellion stifling reform. The economy, battered by inflation and lost trade routes, struggles to support a sprawling realm. Nationalist movements inspired by Europe's revolutions stir in the Balkans and Arab provinces, threatening to unravel the empire's mosaic of peoples. Yet the Ottoman spirit endures, its artisans crafting intricate tiles, its poets weaving verses of resilience, and its rulers seeking a path to renewal. Sultan Selim III, who reigned from 1789 to 1807, set the stage for change with his Nizam-e-Jadid, or New Order, a bold attempt to modernize the army. His efforts, though promising, ended in his deposition by Janissary rebels, a stark reminder of tradition's grip. His successor, Mahmud II, ascends in 1808 with a steely resolve to succeed where Selim failed. Known as the Destroyer, Mahmud is a reformer cloaked in ruthlessness, his reign a turning point. In 1826 he orchestrates the auspicious incident, a bloody purge that annihilates the Janissary corps. On a June night, loyal troops storm their barracks in Istanbul, killing thousands and disbanding the corps that had defied sultans for centuries. The act, though brutal, frees Mahmud to build a modern army, trained in European tactics, uniformed in red fezzes, and loyal to the state. Mahmud's reforms extend beyond the military. He centralizes administration, replacing feudal Sipahi land grants with salaried officials, curbing the power of provincial ayan. He establishes a postal system, linking Istanbul to distant provinces, and opens secular schools to train bureaucrats in French and mathematics. The telegraph, arriving in the 1830s, connects the empire's far-flung corners, a marvel of wire and code. Yet these changes spark resistance. The ulema, guardians of Islamic law, decry secular education as heretical, while rural elites resent the loss of autonomy. Mahmud's heavy taxes, needed to fund his army, fuel unrest, particularly in Anatolia, where Kalali revolts flare anew. The Tanzimat, or reorganization, begins in 1839 under Mahmud's son, Abdülmecid the Fair, a young sultan whose reign embodies hope and fragility. The Hatta Sharif of Gulhan, proclaimed in Istanbul's Rose House Pavilion, is the Tanzimat's cornerstone, promising equality for all subjects, Muslim, Christian, Jew, before the law. It guarantees property rights, fair taxation, and conscription reforms, aiming to unify a diverse empire under a shared civic identity. The edict, drafted by Foreign Minister Mustafa Rashid Pasha, reflects European Enlightenment ideals absorbed through Ottoman envoys in London and Paris. A second decree, the Hatta Humayun of 1856, reinforces these principles, abolishing discriminatory taxes like the jizya and granting non-Muslims access to state offices. The Tanzimat transforms governance. Provincial councils, including Christian and Jewish representatives, advise governors, fostering local input. The legal system blends Sharia with secular codes, inspired by France's Napoleonic laws. Land reforms aim to protect peasants from exploitative landlords, though enforcement lags. The army, rebuilt from the Janissary ashes, adopts Prussian drill and French artillery, its officers trained in new academies like Harbiya. The economy sees tentative growth. Steamships ply the Bosphorus, railroads link Izmir to the interior, and British merchants flood markets with textiles. Istanbul's skyline shifts, with neoclassical buildings like Dolmabahce Palace, its chandeliers a gift from Queen Victoria, symbolizing a new era. Yet reform breeds paradox. Equality on paper does not erase centuries of hierarchy. Christians in the Balkans, emboldened by legal rights, demand autonomy, their aspirations fueled by Europe's nationalist fervor. Muslim elites resent the elevation of infidels, sparking tensions in cities like Damascus, where 1860 riots kill thousands. The economy, though modernizing, remains dependent on European loans, with British and French banks extracting steep interest. The 1856 decree, timed to secure allies in the Crimean War, ties the empire to Western powers, eroding sovereignty. The ulama, sidelined by secular courts, rally conservatives, their sermons a counterpoint to reformist optimism. The Crimean War, 1853-1856, is a crucible for the Tanzimat. Russia, seeking to dominate the Black Sea, invades Ottoman territories, prompting Britain and France to intervene. The war, fought in Crimea and the Danube, sees Ottoman troops, now disciplined in European style, hold their own against Russian Cossacks. The Treaty of Paris in 1856, ending the war, affirms Ottoman territorial integrity, admitting the empire to the concert of Europe. Yet, victory comes at a cost, the empire's debt soars, and Russia's ambitions remain unchecked, setting the stage for future conflicts. The war exposes the limits of reform. Modernized armies win battles, but the empire's diversity, once a strength, now fuels division, nationalist uprisings. The Tanzimat's unintended offspring gather momentum. In Serbia, revolt since 1804 culminate in autonomy by 1830, a model for others. Greece, independent since 1832 after a bloody war, inspires Balkan Christians. Bulgaria stirs, its 1876 uprising crushed with brutal reprisals, drawing European outrage. The Tanzimat's promise of equality, meant to bind the empire, instead emboldens demands for independence, as Serbs, Greeks, and Bulgarians seek nations of their own. The empire's mosaic, stitched by centuries of conquest, frays under the needle of nationalism, a legacy of Vienna's fatal mistake. The confidence that shattered there invited Europe's scrutiny, amplifying voices of dissent. Abdülmecid's successors, Abdülaziz 1861-1876 and Murad V 1876, grapple with these tides. Abdülaziz builds a modern navy, its ironclad steaming beside British fleets, but his lavish spending, palaces, railways, loans, bankrupts the treasury. In 1875, the empire defaults, sparking riots and European intervention. Murad V, a liberal, lasts 3 months before deposition, his reforms stifled by conservative backlash. Abdülhamid II, 1876-1909, inherits a crisis, his reign a balancing act between reform and autocracy. The 1876 constitution, the Tanzimat's zenith, promises a parliament, but Abdülhamid suspends it in 1878, fearing liberal dissent. His pan-Islamic policies rally Muslim subjects, but alienate Christians, accelerating Balkan fractures. The empire's decline, rooted in Vienna's misstep, is now a tide none can stem. Kara Mustafa's failure exposed vulnerabilities that reforms cannot fully mend. As you drift towards sleep, picture the Gülhane decrees ink drying, the steamships gliding past Dolmabahce, and the distant cries of nations awakening. Let this era of fragile reform lull you, as we trace the empire's descent into the storms of nationalism. As the night's gentle hush envelops you, envision a realm where the winds of change sweep through ancient valleys, where the clamor of new nations rises against the backdrop of crumbling domes. It is the late 19th century, and the Ottoman Empire, its glory dimmed by centuries of struggle, faces a new foe, the fire of nationalism that threatens to tear its diverse tapestry apart. The fatal mistake at Vienna in 1683, where Kara Mustafa Pasha's ambition unraveled before a united Europe, set the stage for this unraveling, weakening the empire's grip on its provinces. The Tanzimat reforms, meant to unify, have instead fueled demands for independence, as peoples from the Balkans to the Levant seek their own destinies. As you ease into the calm of this moment, let the story of nationalism and the Eastern question unfold, a tale of rebellion, European intrigue, and an empire's desperate bid to survive. Breathe deeply, and let the past guide you through a landscape of fracturing loyalties. The Eastern question, a term coined by European diplomats, encapsulates the dilemma of the Ottoman Empire's decline. What will replace its authority as its territories erode? The question, born in the wake of Karlowitz, gains urgency as nationalism sweeps Europe. The French Revolution's ideals of liberty and self-determination inspire Ottoman subjects, particularly Christians in the Balkans. who see in Greece's 1821-1832 War of Independence a blueprint for freedom. Serbia, autonomous since 1830, pushes for full sovereignty, its militias clashing with Ottoman garrisons. Bulgaria, stirred by intellectuals like Vasil Levski, erupts in the 1876 April uprising, its villages razed by Ottoman irregulars, the Bulgarian horrors shocking Europe with tales of massacre. Romania, uniting Wallachia and Moldavia, declares independence in 1877, its armies joining Russia against the Ottomans. The Russo-Turkish War of 1877-1878 is a crucible for these tensions. Russia, emboldened by Ottoman weakness, invades, aiming to dominate the Balkans and Black Sea. Ottoman forces, modernized under Abdülhamid Dechin, fight valiantly at Plevna, where Osman Pasha's defense delays Russian advances for months. Yet the empire's resources are stretched, its armies outmatched by Russia's numbers. The Treaty of San Stefano in March 1878 is a disaster, creating a large Bulgarian state under Russian influence and granting independence to Serbia, Romania, and Montenegro. European powers, fearing Russian dominance, intervene at the Congress of Berlin in 1878, led by Bismarck. The treaty shrinks Bulgaria, returns Macedonia to Ottoman control, and places Bosnia under Austro-Hungarian administration. But the empire's losses are stark, 40% of its European territory gone, its prestige further eroded. Abdülhamid Dechin, the Red Sultan, for his suppression of dissent, navigates this maelstrom with cunning. His pan-Islamic policies rally Muslim subjects, emphasizing the Sultan's role as caliph to counter Christian nationalism. He builds the Hejaz Railway, linking Damascus to Medina, to strengthen ties with Arab provinces. Yet his autocracy alienates reformers. The young Ottomans, intellectuals like Mustafa Kemal, demand constitutional rule, their newspapers smuggled from Paris. Abdülhamid's secret police, the Hafia, silence dissent, but the seeds of rebellion grow. In 1889, the Committee of Union and Progress, CUP, later the Young Turks, forms among military cadets dreaming of a modern, unified empire. The Balkans remain a powder keg. In 1875, Bosnia's Christian peasants revolt, sparking a crisis that draws European attention. The Congress of Berlin's solution, handing Bosnia to Austria-Hungary, humiliates the Ottomans, fueling resentment. Macedonia, a patchwork of ethnicities, becomes a battleground for Bulgarian, Greek, and Serbian militias, each backed by foreign powers. The Internal Macedonian Revolutionary Organization, IMRO, stages uprisings, their guerrilla tactics draining Ottoman garrisons. Crete, too, rebels, its Greek population seeking union with Greece, achieved in 1913 after decades of strife. These movements, inspired by Europe's nationalist wave, trace back to Vienna's legacy. The empire's exposed weakness emboldened subjects to dream of nations. The Arab provinces, long loyal, stir as well. In Egypt, nominally Ottoman since 1517, Muhammad Ali's dynasty rules as a quasi-independent state. His 1831-1840 rebellion, seizing Syria and threatening Istanbul, is quelled only by British and Austrian intervention, cementing Egypt's autonomy. By the 1880s, Britain occupies Egypt, citing Ottoman debt defaults, a blow to Abdülhamid's caliphal authority. In the Levant, Arab intellectuals, inspired by Western education, form secret societies like Al-Fatat, whispering of autonomy. These stirrings, though quieter than Balkan revolts, signal a fracturing empire, its unity undermined by the very reforms meant to save it. Europe's great powers exploit this chaos, their ambassadors in Istanbul weaving webs of influence. Britain and France, creditors since the Crimean War, control Ottoman finances through the Ottoman Public Debt Administration, dictating budgets and siphoning revenues. Germany, under Kaiser Wilhelm II, courts Abdülhamid, building the Baghdad Railway to extend influence to the Persian Gulf. Russia, ever the predator, backs Slavic nationalism, arming Serbian and Bulgarian rebels. The Eastern question becomes a chessboard. with Ottoman territories as pawns. The empire, once a player, is now a prize. Its sovereignty eroded by capitulations, trade privileges granted to Europeans that undermine local merchants. Abdulhamid's modernization efforts persist despite these pressures. He expands telegraph lines linking Aleppo to Baghdad and opens schools for women, a nod to equality. The Imperial Military Medical School trains doctors in French, their graduates treating soldiers and civilians alike. The press, though censored, grows with newspapers in Turkish, Arabic, and Greek, fostering debate. Yet these advances cannot stem the tide. The 1894-1896 Armenian massacres, sparked by Christian demands for reform, draw global condemnation, further isolating the empire. Abdulhamid's pan-Islamism, meant to unify, alienates non-Muslims, pushing Armenians and Assyrians toward Russian protection. The Young Turks' 1908 revolution, led by the QP, forces Abdulhamid to restore the 1876 constitution, sparking hope. The parliament, with deputies from across the empire, promises unity, but ethnic tensions flare. In 1909, a counter-revolution by conservatives fails, deposing Abdulhamid for Mehmed V, a figurehead. The Young Turks, led by Enver, Talat, and Kemal Pashas, embraced Turkish nationalism, alienating Arabs and Kurds. The Balkan Wars of 1912 and 1913 are a final blow, with Serbia, Greece, Bulgaria, and Montenegro seizing nearly all European territories, leaving only eastern Thrace. The empire, now confined to Anatolia and the Arab world, faces its twilight. Vienna's fatal mistake, a distant but potent catalyst. As you drift towards sleep, picture the Bosphorus reflecting a fading empire, the cries of new nations rising in the Balkans, and the quiet resolve of reformers battling time. Let this era of fracture and ambition lull you as we approach the final storms that will end an empire. As the night's serene veil drapes over ancient cities, imagine a realm where the echoes of revolution stir the air, where young minds dream of reshaping an empire on the brink, and the Bosphorus reflects the flickering lights of a changing world. It is the early 20th century, and the Ottoman Empire, its foundations cracked by centuries of decline, faces a new chapter of turmoil and aspiration. The fatal mistake at Vienna in 1683, where Kara Mustafa Pasha's overconfidence unleashed a chain of losses, has led to this precarious moment, an empire shorn of most European territories, its authority challenged by nationalist fervor and European ambitions. The Young Turks, a cadre of reformers and nationalists, rise to seize control, promising a constitutional revival but grappling with the empire's deep fractures. As you settle into the gentle cadence of this moment, let the story of their era unfold, a tale of idealism, power struggles, and the empire's desperate grasp at modernity. Breathe softly and let the past carry you through the halls of revolution and reform. The Young Turk movement emerges from the ashes of Abdulhamid II's autocracy, a sultan whose cunning rule masked the empire's woes. By 1908, the empire clings to Anatolia, the Arab provinces, and a sliver of Thrace, its Balkan losses from the 1912-1913 wars a fresh wound. The Committee of Union and Progress, COPE, founded in 1889 among Istanbul's military cadets and intellectuals, has grown into a secret network spanning Europe and the empire. Influenced by French positivism and Turkish nationalism, its leaders, Enver Pasha, Talat Pasha, and Kemal Pasha, envision a centralized modern state where Turks dominate, sidelining ethnic minorities. Exiled in Geneva and Paris, they plot Abdulhamid's downfall. Their newspapers like Tannins smuggling ideas of liberty and equality back to Ottoman soil. The 1908 revolution erupts in July, sparked by cup officers in Macedonia. The Third Army, stationed in Salonika, mutinies against Abdulhamid's spies, demanding the restoration of the 1876 constitution. The Sultan, caught off guard, complies on July 23rd, reopening parliament after 30 years. Jubilation sweeps Istanbul. Crowds chant liberty, equality, fraternity, trams run freely, and censors flee. The parliament, with 300 deputies from Arabs, Armenians, Greeks and Turks, convenes in the Dolmabahce Palace, debating budgets and reforms. The Young Turks promise a second constitutional era, blending Ottoman traditions with European parliamentary models. Censorship lifts, women's journals appear, and secular schools multiply, teaching science alongside history. Yet cracks appear swiftly. The CUP, lacking broad support, faces rivals. The Liberal Ahrar Party pushes decentralization, while conservatives rally around the Sultan. Ethnic tensions flare. Arabs resent Turkish dominance, Kurds chafe at assimilation, and Armenians demand reforms in their eastern provinces. Enver Pasha, a dashing officer, emerges as a hero for his role in the revolution, but his ambition sows division. In March 1909, the counter-revolution sees conservative soldiers in Istanbul depose parliament, reinstating Abdülhamid's old guard. The CUP responds with the Action Army, marching from Salonika under Mahmud Şevket Pasha. On April 13, 1909, they stormed the Yıldız Palace, executing rebels and deposing Abdülhamid for his brother, Mehmed V, a figurehead sultan. The massacre of 200 conservatives marks the CUP's ruthless turn, its idealism hardening into authoritarianism. Under Mehmed V, the CUP consolidates power through the 1909 elections, rigging results to favor loyalists. Talat Pasha, interior minister, builds a secret police network echoing Hafiye but targeting dissenters. Enver, war minister, modernizes the army with German advisors, importing Krupp cannons and Mauser rifles. Cemal, naval minister, strengthens the fleet, though British control of Egyptian finances limits funds. Reforms accelerate. The 1913 law for family rights regulates marriage and inheritance, a step toward secular law. The education system expands with the University of Istanbul teaching medicine and engineering. The telegraph and railroads link Damascus to Baghdad, fostering economic ties but also exposing Arab grievances over Turkish officials. The Balkan Wars of 1912-1913 shatter illusions of unity. The First Balkan War sees Bulgaria, Serbia, Greece and Montenegro overwhelm Ottoman forces, capturing Edirne and nearly reaching Çanakkale. The CUP's army, though reformed, is outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Its losses, 85% of European territory, a national trauma. The Second War, where Bulgaria turns on its allies, allows a partial recovery of Edirne, but the damage is done. Refugees flood Anatolia, swelling ethnic tensions while the wars bankrupt the treasury, forcing European loans. The CUP blames the military's old guard, purging officers and centralizing command under Enver, whose cult of personality grows. Arab discontent simmers. The Ottoman decentralization law of 1913 promises provincial councils, but Turkish dominance persists, alienating elites in Beirut and Baghdad. Secret societies like Al-Ad and Al-Fatah plot autonomy, their leaders educated in Istanbul but inspired by European nationalism. In Libya, Italy's 1911 invasion sparks the Italo-Turkish War, draining resources and exposing naval weaknesses. Enver's guerrilla campaign under Mustafa Kemal delays defeat, but the Treaty of Uchi cedes Libya, further eroding prestige. The CUP's Turkish nationalism, meant to unify, divides. Policies like the 1913 Turkification campaign promote Turkish language in schools, marginalizing Arabic and Kurdish. Armenians, promised reforms by Russia in 1914, face suspicion as potential fifth columnists. The empire's economy, reliant on capitulations, favors European merchants, stifling local industry. Inflation soars, bread riots erupt in Istanbul, and the Young Turks' authoritarianism, censoring press, exiling rivals, undermines their reformist credentials. Vienna's fatal mistake, by weakening the empire, invited these fractures. Kara Mustafa's failure opened the door to European influence, now fueling the very nationalism tearing the empire apart. By 1914, the Cup triumvirate, Enver, Talat, Kemal holds absolute power, parliament a rubber stamp. Mehmed V, the silent sultan, signs their decrees, his role ceremonial. The empire, isolated and desperate, courts Germany, signing a secret alliance in August 1914. Enver dreams of reclaiming lost territories, seeing World War I as a chance for revival. Yet, the Young Turks era, born of revolution, sows the seeds of catastrophe, their ambition echoing Kara Mustafa's hubris. As you drift toward sleep, picture the parliament's debates fading into silence, the Young Turks' banners fluttering over a fracturing realm, and the Bosphorus whispering of wars to come. Let this constitutional struggle lull you as we approach the final tempest. As the moon's soft glow bathes the minarets in silver, envision a world teetering on the edge of abyss, where alliances forge in shadowed chambers and an ancient empire gambles its remnants on the roll of war's dice. It is 1914, and the Ottoman Empire, its domains reduced to Anatolia and the Arab heartlands, stands at the precipice of its greatest trial. The fatal mistake at Vienna over 2 centuries earlier, where a Grand Vizier's pride invited defeat, has cascaded into this moment, a realm fractured by nationalism, burdened by debt, and led by Young Turk leaders whose ambitions mirror past follies. Europe's great powers, entangled in a web of treaties, draw the Ottomans into a conflict that will seal their fate. As you ease into the tranquil flow of this moment, let the story of the prelude to World War I unfold, a tale of diplomacy, desperation, and the empire's last breaths before the storm. Breathe gently and let the past guide you through the tense calm before catastrophe. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914, ignites Europe's powder keg, but for the Ottoman Empire, war's shadow has loomed for years. The Balkan War's devastation, hundreds of thousands dead, millions displaced, has left scars. Anatolia, swollen with Muslim refugees from the Balkans, their hatred of Christians fueling ethnic strife. The Cup triumvirate, Enver Pasha, Talat Pasha, Kemal Pasha, governs with an iron hand, their 1913 coup d'etat against liberal rivals cementing dictatorship. Enver, war minister and de facto leader, idolizes Germany, seeing Kaiser Wilhelm II as a savior. German military missions training Ottoman troops since 1913 supply advisors like Lyman von Sanders, modernizing the army but tying it to Berlin's ambitions. The empire's economy is a house of cards. The 1914 capitulations grant Europeans extraterritorial rights, undermining sovereignty. The Ottoman Public Debt Administration, controlled by Britain and France, siphons customs revenues. Inflation ravages the poor, while German loans fund railroads like the Berlin-Baghdad line, extending Teutonic influence to the Gulf. Arab provinces chafe under Turkish officials. Sharif Hussein of Mecca, guardian of Islam's holiest sites, corresponds secretly with Britain, weighing rebellion. In Syria and Iraq, Arab officers in Al-Ahad plot independence, resenting Cup Turkification policies that impose Turkish in schools and courts. Diplomacy becomes a high-stakes game. The Triple Entente, Britain, France, Russia, views the Ottomans as a Russian sphere, while Germany courts alliance to counter British naval dominance and secure oil routes. Enver, ambitious for glory, rejects neutrality urged by Grand Vizier Said Halim Pasha. On August 2, 1914, the empire signs a secret treaty with Germany, binding its fate to the Central Powers. To provoke war, Enver allows 2 German warships, Goeben and Breslau, to enter the Black Sea, bombarding Russian ports on October 29. Russia declares war, followed by Britain and France. Framing the conflict as a jihad against infidels to rally Muslim subjects, mobilization strains the empire to breaking. The army, 800,000 strong on paper, fields perhaps 500,000 effective troops, many poorly equipped. Conscription sweeps villages, leaving fields untended, sparking famine. Women and children toil in factories, producing shells under German supervision. Enver's grand strategy, attacking Russia in the Caucasus to reclaim Kars and Ardahan, lost in 1878, ignores logistics. The winter campaign of 1914-1915 is a disaster. Sarıkamış sees 90,000 Ottoman soldiers perish in blizzards. Enver's hubris echoing Kara Mustafa's at Vienna, where overconfidence met unpreparedness. The home front crumbles. Talat, interior minister, enforces conscription brutally, deporting draft dodgers. Armenian communities, suspected of Russian sympathies, face escalating persecution. The 1915 Armenian genocide, orchestrated by Talat and Enver, sees 1.5 million Armenians marched into the desert. Their deaths a stain on history, driven by wartime paranoia and nationalist fervor. Kemal, governor of Syria, suppresses Arab dissent, executing leaders in Beirut and Damascus, alienating potential allies. The Arab revolt, sparked in 1916 by Sharif Hussein with British support, sees Lawrence of Arabia aid Bedouin guerrillas, disrupting the Hejaz railway and weakening Ottoman hold on Arabia. European fronts expose weaknesses. Gallipoli 1915-1916 sees Mustafa Kemal's defense repel Allied landings, a rare triumph boosting morale. Yet, the campaign drains resources with trench warfare mirroring Europe's stalemate. Mesopotamia sees British advances up the Tigris, capturing Baghdad in 1917 after Quds' Ottoman surrender. Palestine falls to Allenby in 1917, Jerusalem's surrender a symbolic loss. The Navy, under German command, achieves little, its dreadnoughts Reshadieh and Sultan Osman seized by Britain pre-war. Internal strife mounts. The Cup's dictatorship stifles dissent. Opposition parties like the Freedom and Accord Party are suppressed, their leaders exiled or killed. Mehmed Fee dies in 1918, succeeded by Vahdettin, who seeks armistice as defeats pile up. Enver's Caucasus obsession diverts troops from Palestine, while German allies demand more concessions. Famine grips Anatolia, with 1917-1918 harvests failing, bodies littering Istanbul's streets. Refugees from the Caucasus and Balkans overwhelm cities, disease rampant. By 1918, collapse looms. The Arab revolt gains momentum, British promises of independence via the McMahon-Hussein correspondence fueling desertions. Bulgaria's surrender opens the Balkan flank, and Allied advances in Syria force Cemal's retreat. Enver, Talat, and Cemal flee as the Armistice of Mudros is signed on October 30, 1918, partitioning the empire, Allied occupation of Istanbul, demilitarization of the Straits and Allied control of Arab provinces. The Young Turks' gamble, mirroring Vienna's fatal pride, ends in ruin, their nationalism unable to forge unity from diversity. The empire's final strains reveal Vienna's enduring legacy. Kara Mustafa's mistake weakened a giant, inviting the nationalism and interventions that now dismantle it. As you drift towards sleep, picture the Goban's guns falling silent, the Hejaz railway's twisted tracks, and the quiet desperation of a realm awaiting its end. Let this prelude to catastrophe soothe you as we enter the war's final throes and the birth of a new dawn. As the night's gentle embrace wraps you in its calm, picture a world consumed by the roar of cannons, where the ancient minarets of Istanbul cast trembling shadows over a city gripped by the chaos of war. It is 1914, and the Ottoman Empire, a shadow of its former might, has cast its lot with the Central Powers in a global conflict that will be its last. The fatal mistake at Vienna in 1683, where Kara Mustafa Pasha's hubris shattered the empire's aura of invincibility, has led to this moment. a realm fractured by nationalism, drained by debt, and led by Young Turk, leaders whose ambitions echo the Grand Vizier's doomed gamble. As the Great War engulfs the world, the Ottoman Empire fights on multiple fronts, its people enduring unimaginable hardship, its borders crumbling under the weight of defeat. As you settle into the tranquil rhythm of this moment, let the story of the empire's final war unfold, a tale of sacrifice, betrayal, and the end of an era. Breathe softly, and let the past carry you through the flames of conflict to the ashes of a fallen empire. The Ottoman Empire enters World War I in November 1914, bound by a secret alliance with Germany, orchestrated by Enver Pasha, the ambitious war minister. The Young Turks, Enver, Talat, and Kemal Pashas, see the war as a chance to reverse centuries of losses, dreaming of reclaiming territories from the Balkans to the Caucasus. The empire, reduced to Anatolia, Thrace, and the Arab provinces, musters an army of roughly 800,000, though poorly equipped and spread thin. German advisors, led by General Lyman von Sanders, drill the troops, but the empire's infrastructure, roads, railways, supply chains, cannot support a modern war. The economy, shackled by European loans and the Ottoman Public Debt Administration, teeters on collapse, with inflation soaring and bread scarce in Istanbul's markets. The war opens with disaster. Enver's Caucasus campaign in December 1914, aimed at retaking Kars and Ardahan from Russia, mirrors Vienna's fatal overreach. At Sarıkamış, 90,000 Ottoman soldiers march into a winter nightmare, their thin coats no match for blizzards. Russian forces entrenched in the mountains decimate the Third Army, with only 10,000 surviving frostbite, disease, and gunfire. Enver, retreating to Istanbul, blames subordinates, but the loss shatters morale. The campaign, like Kara Mustafa's siege, reveals the peril of ambition unchecked by preparation, a lesson unlearned since 1683. The Gallipoli campaign of 1915-1916 offers a rare triumph. Allied forces, British, French, Australian, and New Zealand troops, land on the Dardanelles, aiming to seize Istanbul and open a supply route to Russia. Mustafa Kemal, a young colonel, emerges as a hero, his defense of Çanakkale repelling wave after wave. Trenches carve the peninsula where 250,000 Ottoman casualties match Allied losses, but the victory, Allied withdrawal in January 1916, bolsters spirits. Kemal's leadership, marked by foresight and grit, contrasts with Enver's recklessness, hinting at a future beyond the empire. Yet, Gallipoli drains resources, its glory fleeting as other fronts falter. In Mesopotamia, the British advance up the Tigris, besieging Kut in 1915. Ottoman forces under Halil Pasha trap 13,000 British troops, forcing surrender in April 1916, a propaganda coup. But the victory is Pyrrhic. British reinforcements backed by Indian sepoys recapture Kut and seize Baghdad in 1917. In Palestine, General Allenby's Egyptian expeditionary force overwhelms Ottoman lines, capturing Jerusalem in December 1917, a symbolic blow to the Sultan's caliphal authority. The Arab Revolt, launched in 1916 by Sharif Hussein of Mecca with British aid, further weakens the empire. T.E. Lawrence's Bedouin guerrillas sabotage the Hejaz Railway, isolating garrisons and fueling Arab dreams of independence, promised but later betrayed by the Sykes-Picot Agreement. The home front is a crucible of suffering. Conscription empties villages, leaving women and children to farm barren fields. Famine grips Anatolia, with 1916-1918 harvests failing. Istanbul's breadlines stretch through streets littered with the starving. The Armenian genocide, orchestrated by Talat in 1915, sees 1.5 million Armenians deported or massacred, their villages razed in eastern Anatolia. Driven by wartime paranoia and Turkish nationalism, the genocide, denied by the cup but witnessed by missionaries, stains the empire's legacy, alienating allies and fueling European condemnation. Arabs too face repression. Kemal Pasha's executions in Damascus and Beirut, dubbed the Great Crime, turn elites against Istanbul. By 1918, the empire crumbles. Bulgaria's surrender in September opens the Balkans, while Allied advances in Syria force Kemal's retreat. Enver's last gamble, a Caucasus offensive, fails as German support collapses. On October 30, 1918, the Armistice of Mudros is signed aboard a British warship, a humiliating end. Allied troops occupy Istanbul, the straits are demilitarized, and Arab provinces are carved up under British and French mandates. The Cup triumvirate flees to Berlin, leaving Mehmed V's successor, Vahdettin, Mehmed VI, to face the wreckage. The Sultan, a puppet under Allied watch, signs decrees dismantling the army, his palace guarded by British Marines. The empire's collapse is total. The war claims 2 million Ottoman lives, soldiers, civilians, Armenians, leaving Anatolia a wasteland of refugees and ruins. The economy, gutted by debt, sees the Akçe worthless, markets empty. Nationalist movements, emboldened by Allied promises, demand independence. Arabs form councils in Damascus. Kurds in Van, Greeks in Izmir. The empire, once a mosaic of peoples, fractures under the weight of its diversity. A process begun at Vienna when Kara Mustafa's defeat exposed its vulnerabilities to Europe's gaze. The Young Turks' dream of revival, like the Grand Vizier's, was undone by overreach, their nationalism igniting the very forces tearing the empire apart. In Istanbul, whispers of resistance stir. Mustafa Kemal, hero of Gallipoli, returns to a city under foreign flags, his mind turning to a new vision, a Turkish nation-state free of imperial burdens. The armistice's terms, Allied control of railways, ports and telegraphs, spur defiance among officers and intellectuals. In Anatolia, guerrilla bands form, their rifles a promise of rebirth. As you drift towards sleep, picture the silent Bosphorus under British warships, the empty throne of Topkapi, and the distant spark of a new dawn. Let this collapse lull you as we witness the birth of a nation from an empire's ashes. As the stars weave their final dance across the sky, envision a land rising from ruin, where the echoes of a fallen empire mingle with the clamor of a new nation forging its path. It is 1919, and the Ottoman Empire, its grandeur extinguished by the fires of World War I, lies in fragments, its capital occupied, its provinces carved by foreign hands. The fatal mistake at Vienna in 1683, where Kara Mustafa Pasha's ambition cracked the empire's invincibility, has culminated in this moment, a realm reduced to Anatolia, its people weary but defiant, led by a visionary who will redefine their destiny. Mustafa Kemal, the hero of Gallipoli, emerges to build a republic from the wreckage, a modern Turkey that casts off imperial chains. As you ease into the tranquil embrace of this moment, let the story of this rebirth unfold, a tale of resistance, reform, and the forging of a new identity. Breathe gently and let the past guide you through the dawn of a nation born from an empire's end. The Armistice of Mudros leaves the Ottoman Empire prostrate. Allied troops, British, French, Italian, occupy Istanbul, their warships anchored in the Bosphorus, their flags flying over government buildings. The Treaty of Sèvres, drafted in 1920, is a death sentence. Greece gains Western Anatolia, Armenia an eastern state, Kurds autonomy, and the Straits an international zone. Arab provinces are mandates under Britain and France, with Syria, Iraq, and Palestine lost. Sultan Vahdettin, a figurehead, signs decrees under Allied pressure, his court a shadow of Topkapi's splendor. The empire, once spanning 3 continents, is reduced to a rump state, its sovereignty a memory. Mustafa Kemal, now 38, refuses surrender. A colonel hardened by Gallipoli, he rejects Sèvres, rallying officers in Anatolia. In May 1919, he lands in Samsun, ostensibly to oversee demobilization, but secretly organizes resistance. The Amasya Circular, issued in June, declares the nation's independence under threat, calling for a congress in Sivas. Delegates, soldiers, clerics, merchants meet in September, forming the National Pact, demanding sovereignty over Turkish-majority lands. Kemal, elected leader, establishes a shadow government in Ankara, defying Istanbul's sultan. His charisma, honed in war, unites disparate factions: peasants, intellectuals, tribal chiefs. The Turkish War of Independence, 1919-1923, ignites. Greece, backed by Britain, invades Izmir, aiming to carve a Hellenic empire. Italian forces hold Antalya, French troops Cilicia. Kemal's national army, a mix of regulars and guerrillas, fights back, their rifles scavenged from Ottoman arsenals. The 1920 Battle of Dumlupinar sees Kemal's forces halt Greek advances, while 1921's Sakarya River Battle, a 22-day slog, breaks their momentum. Kemal, promoted to Ghazi, warrior, uses Anatolia's rugged terrain, stretching enemy supply lines. Russia, now Bolshevik, supplies arms, seeing Turkey as a buffer against the West. The ulama, split between Istanbul's loyalists and Ankara's nationalists, issue fatwas supporting Kemal, framing resistance as jihad. By 1922, the tide turns. The Great Offensive at Afyonkarahisar routs Greek forces, who retreat, burning villages in their wake. Izmir is liberated in September, its port free of foreign flags. The Allies, wary of escalation, negotiate an armistice at Mudanya in October 1922. The Treaty of Lausanne, signed in July 1923, replaces Sèvres, recognizing Turkey's sovereignty over Anatolia and eastern Thrace. Greece and Turkey agree to population exchanges, uprooting 1.5 million Greeks from Anatolia, Turks from Greece, in a painful but stabilizing act. Armenia and Kurdish autonomy are abandoned, cementing a Turkish nation-state. On October 29, 1923, the Republic of Turkey is proclaimed in Ankara, with Kemal as its first president. The Sultanate is abolished, Vahdettin exiled to Italy, ending 623 years of Ottoman rule. The Caliphate, a symbolic link to Islamic unity, is dissolved in 1924, a bold secular move. Kemal, now Atatürk, father of the Turks, launches sweeping reforms to forge a modern secular nation. The fez, symbol of Ottoman tradition, is banned, replaced by Western hats. The Arabic script is replaced with a Latin alphabet in 1928, boosting literacy. Sharia courts are closed, replaced by Swiss-inspired civil codes, granting women rights to vote and divorce by 1934, decades before many European nations. Ataturk's reforms reshape society. Secular schools teach science and history, sidelining religious education. The call to prayer shifts from Arabic to Turkish, mosques repurposed as museums like Hagia Sophia. Industrialization accelerates, factories rise in Kayseri, railways link Ankara to Izmir. The economy, though agrarian, grows under state banks, breaking European financial grip. Turkish nationalism, defined by language and culture, unites Anatolia but marginalizes Kurds, whose 1925 Sheikh Said rebellion is crushed, highlighting tensions in Ataturk's vision of homogeneity. Foreign policy reflects pragmatism. Ataturk avoids alliances, maintaining neutrality in a volatile world. Treaties with Greece in 1930 mend ties, while pacts with Iran and Iraq secure borders. Turkey joins the League of Nations in 1932, a nod to global integration. Yet, challenges persist. Rural poverty lingers, and Kurdish unrest simmers. Ataturk's cult of personality, with statues in every town, masks authoritarianism. Opposition parties are banned, press censored. His health declines, and on November 10, 1938, he dies in Istanbul's Dolmabahce Palace, aged 57, mourned as the Republic's architect. Turkey's rise from Ottoman ashes is a testament to resilience, but Vienna's shadow lingers. Kara Mustafa's fatal mistake weakened the empire, inviting European intervention and nationalism that tore it apart. Atatürk's republic, built on those ruins, rejects imperial diversity for a unified nation, its success a bittersweet epilogue to centuries of decline. As you drift towards sleep, picture Ankara's new parliament glowing under starlight, the Bosphorus free of foreign ships, and the quiet pride of a nation reborn. Let this final chapter lull you as the Ottoman saga fades into the dawn of modern Turkey.